Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Lord of Hell. Chapter 1. The sky is covered with dark clouds, the earth is on fire, and the air is filled with the smell of sulfur. This is the legendary Hell. A black-haired figure sat on a throne made of obsidian. In front of him, a small clay dwarf jumped up and hit the black stone above. A mushroom sprouted from the black stone amidst the sound effects. Then, the mushroom fell from the black stone, and the dwarf stepped forward to swallow it. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a big dwarf. So boring. The figure sighed and waved his hand, and both the dwarf and the Super Mario scene in front of him turned into ashes and disappeared. This person's name is Wang Nanchuan, and he is the master of this new hell. I also traveled through time when others traveled through time, but I ended up traveling through time to a new hell where there are no bugs. Why am I so unlucky? Wang Nanchuan sighed. He had absolute control over this hell. The problem was that there was no other life except him. At first, he was a little excited, but a year later, all he had left was loneliness and mania. Shaking his head, Wang Nanchuan's eyes penetrated the void and looked to the dimension above, where there was a planet full of life. There is a mysterious connection between this planet and this hell. Wang Nanchuan really wants to enter this planet, but the problem is that he can't. There is a golden defense shield composed of 3 nodes outside the planet. Wang Nanchuan once sent a projection to land on the planet, but before he could get close, the projection was shattered by a golden magic whip. After that, he tried many methods, but none of them succeeded. Obviously, there is a super guardian on that planet, a super guardian that even the Lord of Hell is afraid of. These 3 nodes, the more I look at them, the more they look like power grid symbols. Where have I traveled to? Wang Nanchuan leaned on the chair with a look of despair. If he continued like this, he might go crazy. What's worse, he couldn't even commit suicide. Unless this hell was destroyed, he, the Lord of Hell, would never die. At this moment, Wang Nanchuan noticed a black shadow quietly approaching the planet. He had a layer of strange dark energy on his body, and the Guardian Circle did not detect him. Wang Nanchuan's eyes lit up, and he immediately released a projection that silently approached the black shadow and attached it to the other person's clothes. Black Shadow's strength was far inferior to Wang Nanchuan, the Lord of Hell, so he didn't notice anything. He quietly came outside the planet, used the dark energy in his body to dissolve the defensive shield to create a small hole, and then sneaked into the planet secretly. The opportunity has come. Wang Nanchuan was overjoyed because the hole was too small. In order to ensure that he could pass through it, he turned 90% of his power into a curse and integrated it into the Black Shadow's body, leaving only 10% to remain attached to the Black Shadow's clothes. Soon, the Black Shadow completely entered the planet, and then the defensive shield returned to normal. Wang Nanchuan exhaled and murmured to himself, "Going in, no matter what, the projection must stay on that planet, otherwise, I will really die of boredom." In Texas, in the dark night with dark clouds and flashing thunder, a figure appeared on the earth with flames. He laughed loudly and said, "Ha ha, my evil spirit has entered the earth. Old man, wait until I find Street. Vincent, saw contract, whether it is earth or hell, will belong to me." This figure, wearing a long black coat, with a pale face and an evil look, is the son of Hell Lord Mephisto, the black-hearted demon. The Black-Heart Demon. The son of Hell Demon Mephisto. Wang Nanchuan, who was attached to the Black-Heart Devil's clothes, was stunned. This name seemed to be a character in Ghost Rider. Could it be that he had traveled to the Ghost Rider plane? No, it should be the Marvel plane. Those 3 nodes are not the symbol of the power grid, but the symbol of Kamatage. The person who shattered my projection before was Bald Chang, Bald Supreme, the Ancient One Master. Wang Nanchuan recalled the plot of Ghost Rider, and narrowed his eyes slightly. In other words, this is a good opportunity. If it succeeds, no one can stop me from entering the earth. It is worth mentioning that although the Black-Heart Demon speaks English, Wang Nanchuan can understand it because he can analyze mental fluctuations. In fact, he can learn this language very quickly. While Wang Nanchuan was meditating, the Black-Heart Demon came to a motorcycle bar. The tall guard at the door tried to stop him from entering, but he pointed at his chest. The next second, the tall guard's body quickly turned black from his chest. Soon, he turned into a mummy and fell to the ground. This was death from sulfur poisoning. Fragile human beings. The black heart demon smiled disdainfully, walked into the bar and killed everyone inside. What an unexpected bonus. Wang Nanshuan's eyes lit up, and he quietly took away all the souls of the dead. The black heart demon is different from other demons. He has no soul, so he generally does not devour souls. After killing everyone, the black heart demon began to summon his men. Soon, a ball of soil formed a bald man in the corner, but it was the earth demon. Then, a man with long hair and his whole body was covered with water emerged from the drink. This was water demon. Finally, a strong wind blew in from outside and turned into a long-haired and bearded man. He was the wind demon. These three demons are all angels who fell from heaven. They stayed in the human world and merged with the natural elements to become demons. It can be seen from their tattered clothes that they are not doing well. The black-hearted demon said, "Help me find the St. Fanganza contract. By then, we will be able to dominate everything." Okay, we don't want to hide every day and live in danger. The three demons looked at each other and agreed. In these years, in order to avoid the pursuit of Kamatage and heaven, they have lived an extremely miserable life. That is to say, they do not need to eat, otherwise they will be absolutely malnourished. The black heart demon was about to continue talking, when a loud shout came from outside, "Black Heart!" But when Mephisto arrived, Wang Nanshuan did not go out with the black heart demon. In the human world, he was not afraid of Mephisto, but he could not let him know of his existence for the time being. Mephisto, dressed as an old gentleman, came to persuade the black heart demon to return to hell. Naturally, the black heart demon was unwilling. He shouted, "Old man, you have lived too long, you deserve to die. What is the greatest sorrow of being a prince? The king will never die, so the black-hearted demon wants to find the contract of St. Fanganza and build a small hell on earth. Only in this way can he become the master. On earth, I am no match for you, but my knight will find you and kill you." When Mephisto saw that the black-hearted demon was unrepentant, he left a harsh word and turned into a shadow and disappeared. The earth is protected by the supreme mage, and Mephisto can only descend as a projection with little power to trick people into signing soul contracts. The other lords sneered at this and always thought that Mephisto was the shame of hell. "Ghost Rider, the hellfire in him will soon belong to me. My black heart will become the master of hell in the world." The black-hearted devil yelled confidently. At this moment, his body suddenly became unable to move. Then, a voice sounded faintly. "I'm sorry, Blackheart classmate, your scene is finished. Please go out and get your lunch box. Today no chicken legs." Along with this sound, a large amount of black energy came out of the Blackheart demon's body, and then, this black energy enveloped him, making him shrink continuously. What happened? The Blackheart demon was shocked, and then he sensed Wang Nanshuan's aura and shouted in disbelief, "Lord! This is impossible. How can there be a hell lord on earth?" "Of course, thank you very much." With a smile on his face, Wang Nanshuan controlled the puppet curse to gradually turn the Blackheart demon into a puppet. As the Lord of Hell, he was born with many abilities, such as flame control, curses, super strength, contract power, etc. Lord of Hell. The expressions of the three Feng Mo trio changed drastically. They did not dare to approach at all and even wanted to run away. At this time, Wang Nanshuan appeared and said coldly, "Kneel there and wait for my order." The three demons did not dare to resist and knelt down obediently. That was a hell lord. No, the black heart demon was filled with unwillingness. He finally escaped from hell. How could he fail like this? He hasn't even started yet. Unfortunately, no matter how unwilling the black heart demon was, he failed. Wrapped in the black energy, he turned into a small black statue floating in the air. Wang Nanshuan grabbed the statue and said to the three demons, "Give me your phone." Quote, "Cell phone." The three demons were stunned. They had no idea that the Hell Lord's first request was for a mobile phone. Is hell so high-tech now? Feng Mo was more clever. He got up and found a mobile phone from the corpse and handed it to Wang Nanshuan respectfully. Wang Nanshuan took the palm-sized mobile phone and found that it was now 2008. He opened the browser and a news item popped up, about Tony Stark dating a beauty from Maxim magazine. This unbeatable appearance is from the Marvel movie plane. Wang Nanshuan shook his head and began to search for the information he wanted on the internet. Feng Mo carefully reminded, "Lord, Mephisto's knights will find this place soon. We should leave as soon as possible to find the St. Fenggenza contract. Wang Nanshuan asked, how do you plan to find it? Feng Mo replied, the Black Heart Demon said that the contract is hidden in a nearby cemetery, but he didn't say where exactly. You can ask him. The Black Heart statue shouted, I will never tell you until I die. He doesn't know the specific location. Besides, I have already found out. Wang Nanshuan showed his phone to Feng Mo. There was a piece of news on it. The famous driver explosive button was buried in the cemetery outside street Michael's church after his death. Explosive button was the father of Johnny Explosive, the Ghost Rider. The three demons and the Black Heart Demon looked unbelieving. How could you find out such a secret location with just a few clicks on your phone? If it were so easy, why hasn't Mephisto found the contract for so many years? These days, the devil also has to keep pace with the times and set out. Wang Nanshuan didn't waste any time. He took down the map and turned into a black light and flew towards the cemetery. The wind demon quickly turned into a strong wind and picked up the other two demons to follow Wang Nanshuan. In the cemetery outside street Michael's church, an old cowboy was repairing the grave with a shovel. At this moment, a gust of wind fell from the sky, causing the fallen leaves to dance around him. The old cowboy hurriedly held down his cowboy hat. Immediately afterwards, the strong wind disappeared, and four figures appeared in front of the old cowboy. The old cowboy's eyes suddenly froze. He could tell at a glance that these four guys were not human beings. Wang Nanshuan looked at the old cowboy and asked, the Ghost Rider Carter Shiri who betrayed Mephisto and stole the contract of St. Fenggenza, am I not looking for the wrong person? Shilei stepped back and denied, you have recognized the wrong person. I am just a gravekeeper. Yeah, Wang Nanshuan raised his hand, and the shovel in Shilei's hand flew into his hand. Shilei was shocked, his eyes were blazing, and he rushed in front of Wang Nanshuan at a speed that was completely inappropriate for his age, and grabbed the shovel. Wang Nanshuan grabbed the shovel and knocked Shilei away with his backhand. Although Shilei was once a ghost rider, he had not judged souls for hundreds of years. The fire of hell was so weak that it seemed that it would go out at any time. He was no match for Wang Nanshuan. Shilei fell to the ground and let out a loud roar without giving up. A holy light flew out of the house in the distance and shot straight towards Wang Nanshuan like a sharp arrow. This is the power on the statue of Saint Michael. Sori was able to hide for so long without being discovered by Mephisto because Michael was protecting him. Wang Nanshuan took out the statue of the Black Heart Demon to resist the holy light. A large amount of black energy emerged from the statue, and the Black Heart Demon let out a shrill scream. Is this guy still a human? Not only turn him into a statue, but also use him to resist attacks. The Hell Lord really doesn't have any good things. Catch him, Wang Nanshuan ordered, and the three demons reacted and immediately rushed towards Shilei. They were shocked. The Lord actually found the contract through his mobile phone. Isn't this too magical? Soon, Shilei was beaten to death by the three demons. He shouted loudly, I surrender. I will take you to find the contract, but you must let me go. You are really good at acting. Wang Nanshuan sneered, shook his hand, the shovel disappeared into ashes, and a sheepskin scroll appeared out of thin air, which was the legendary St. Fenggenza contract. Shilei was shocked. How do you know the contract is hidden in the shovel? Because I like watching superhero movies. Speaking of which, they are still as good as before. Unlike now, they are so correct in every aspect. Wang Nanshuan put away the contract and said, Carter Shiri, it's such a pity that your soul has been sold to Mephisto. Otherwise, I could have made you my subject. Sori was shocked. Your people. Are you the Lord of Hell? Bingo. Wang Nanshuan said. Sign the contract and contribute the spirit of vengeance to me, and I will grant you 1 year of life. If you don't sign, I will forcibly peel off the spirit of vengeance. At that time, you will taste the most terrible pain in the world. Quote. In fact, with Wang Nanshuan's current strength, he may not be able to peel off the spirit of vengeance. Otherwise, he would not sign a contract with Shilei at all. After signing the contract, he can borrow the power of the original body. I'll sign, Shilei said happily. I have no choice anyway. If I sign the contract, I can at least live for 1 more year. Very good. Wang Nanshuan nodded with satisfaction. He raised his hand and a transparent contract appeared in front of Shilei. Shilei complained while checking the contents of the contract. You are much better than Mephisto. That fool did something in the parchment. After opening the parchment, his fingers will be cut. Then, the blood will drip on the contract, and the contract will be established. Is this okay? He is truly the most shameless lord of hell. Wang Nanshuan and the three demons both looked at him with contempt. This method was too low level. Soon, Shilei read the contract and asked, "Can I add a few more years?" Carter Shirey, I know you are stalling for time, and I also know that you signed the contract to remain useful and stop me. Wang Nanshuan said, I can process hundreds of souls a minute, and I don't have time to waste with you. Either you sign it, or I forcibly peel off the spirit of vengeance. Shilei's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he happily signed the contract. He asked, which hell lord are you? You'll find out later. Wang Nanshuan activated the power of the contract, and a dim angelic figure made of flames flew out of Carter Shirey's body, which was the spirit of revenge. The spirits of vengeance were originally angels of God, ordered by God to come to the earth to clean up evil. Later, they and the devil were both injured. Mephisto stole some of the seriously injured angels of vengeance and turned them into fallen spirits of vengeance. Because the spirit of vengeance left his body, the old cowboy fell into extreme weakness. He looked at the spirit of vengeance that had been haunting him for half his life and cursed, "So you look like this, you are so ugly." The spirit of vengeance was very angry and wanted to struggle, but could not escape Wang Nanshuan's control. Wang Nanshuan wasted no time and took the spirit of vengeance into his body. Then, he used the power of the Hell Lord to forcibly erase the spirit of vengeance's consciousness. Wang Nanshuan closed his eyes and opened them again after a moment. His eyes were filled with hell fire. The fire quickly spread throughout his body, making him look like a burning man. However, Wang Nanshuan did not turn into a skull like the Ghost Riders. Unlike those Ghost Riders, he controlled the spirit of vengeance. Very good. Wang Nanshuan put away the flame and took out the statue of the Black Heart Demon again. With a wave of his hand, a black light flew out of the statue and penetrated into Shilei's body. The old cowboy who was about to die immediately recovered to health. The black-hearted demon almost went berserk. Use my power again. Old cowboy, cherish the last year of your life and don't get involved in too many things. Wang Nanshuan snapped his fingers, and Shilei fainted. Feng Mo said coldly, Lord, do you want me to kill him? This does not violate the contract. I don't have the habit of breaking promises. Besides, it's not a bad thing that he's alive. He can help us delay the Ghost Rider. Wang Nanshuan glanced at Feng Mo and said coldly. Feng Mo smiled awkwardly and did not dare to say anything more. After thinking about it, Wang Nanshuan took out 2 balls of flame and handed them to the Earth Demon and the Water Demon, and said, Earth Demon, take the flame with you and go as far as possible. Water Demon, go to the TV station in the city to find a girl named Luo Shan. Woman, don't hurt her, wait for my order. This is Wang Nanshuan leaving a way out for himself. If the next battle fails, these 2 flames will make him make a comeback. No matter what, he cannot be completely driven back to hell. Yes, Lord. Although the Earth Demon and the Water Demon didn't understand why, they still left quickly with the flames. Then, Wang Nanshuan said to the Wind Demon, Wind Demon, take me to Shengfanganza village. The village of Santa Fanganza is a village that has believed in God for generations. All the villagers in it are devout believers in God. Later, Mephisto used the promise of eternal life to make them kill each other. In the end, thousands of people died, including the elderly and children. No exception. These souls full of corrupted power have been trapped in the village of Saint Fanganza. As long as you hold the Saint Fanganza contract, you can collect their souls and build a small hell on earth. Mephisto was about to succeed, but unexpectedly, Carter Shirey, whom he sent to collect souls, rebelled and ran away with the contract, which led to so many things happening now. Yes, Lord. Feng Mo said respectfully. The previous respect was due to fear, but now, there is more respect. This Lord's methods are really extraordinary. Then, the Wind Demon turned into a strong wind and led the way, followed closely by Wang Nanshuan. At the same time, in nearby Rocket City, a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, burning with flames and too cool to have friends, was running wildly, with a straight trail of flames behind it, which was very dazzling. The owner of the motorcycle is a flaming skeleton wearing leather clothes and chains. He is Explosive Johnny. When he was young, he was deceived by Mephisto and signed a contract to become the other party's Ghost Rider. Mephisto said he could cure the disease. As a result, his father died in an accident the next day. Hurry to St. Fanganza village, the Black Heart demon has obtained the contract. Mephisto's urgent voice sounded in Johnny's mind. Without the suppression of Michael's holy power, the location of St. Fanganza's contract could no longer be hidden from him. To be honest, Mephisto was very confused. Why did that idiot get the contract so quickly? Is it possible that the stupid son has finally come to his senses? Should he be comforted or should he yell? Johnny was transforming for the first time, and his reason was completely controlled by the spirit of revenge. The spirit of revenge let out a loud roar, speeded up and hurried on with all its strength. The police cars that wanted to intercept along the way rumbled and exploded in flames. What's even more exaggerated is that when encountering an artificial lake, Ghost Rider didn't take any detours and drove directly across the lake. Newton's coffin board might not be able to hold it down anymore. Fanganza village has long been turned into ruins. Wang Nanshuan walked among it, and his ears were filled with the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling. A bunch of greedy idiots, but thanks to your greed, otherwise I wouldn't have had a chance to get out of this predicament. Wang Nanshuan murmured to himself that he snatched the St. Fanganza contract not to become a master, but to allow himself to enter the earth without restrictions. He had had enough of this year's loneliness, not to mention that the earth had lots of souls. Wang Nanshuan wasted no time and took out the contract to collect the soul. At this moment, accompanied by the roar of a motorcycle, the Ghost Rider officially appeared. Seeing that Wang Nanshuan was about to open the contract, the Ghost Rider immediately threw a ball of burning flames at him. Wang Nanshuan sidestepped to avoid it. While he forcibly activated the contract, he complained, "Is it such a coincidence?" Mephisto appeared out of thin air. He looked at Wang Nanshuan and asked in shock, "You are not a Black Heart. Which level of hell are you the lord of? Why is your breath so strange?" Wang Nanshuan did not answer. As the contract was activated, dense crowds of ghosts appeared around him. They rushed towards Wang Nanshuan with strange screams that sounded like excitement and relief. "Stop him!" Mephisto screamed, and Ghost Rider was about to rush up on his motorcycle when a gust of wind hit him, knocking him off the motorcycle and onto the ground. The Ghost Rider immediately got up and swung the flame chain towards the wind demon, who turned into a violent wind. Unexpectedly, the flame chain swept over the wind demon and did not hurt the wind demon at all. "Ha ha ha, you can't hurt me." The wind demon laughed proudly, rushed forward and swept the Ghost Rider away again. At the same time, a voice came into the Ghost Rider's ears along the strong wind. "Ghost Rider, do you remember Roseanne from Rocket City? The water demon went to find him." "She did. You dare?" Ghost Rider roared angrily. The consciousness belonging to Explosive Johnny awakened, and tried his best to resist the consciousness of the spirit of revenge. Roseanne was his guilt-filled ex-girlfriend. At the same time, a large number of souls rushed into Wang Nanshuan's body, and Wang Nanshuan used them to build a small hell. Once successful, this small hell will be connected to his hell, and by then, Kamatage's formation will no longer be able to stop him. Seeing that Ghost Rider was entangled, Mephisto was in a panic. He thought about it and decided to call the police. Yes, call the police, but not to the ordinary police, but to Kamal Taj. "Ancient Yi, someone is building a small hell in the world, do you still care about it?" Mephisto shouted to the sky. Everyone present, including Wang Nanshuan, looked at Mephisto in shock. "You, a lord of hell, actually called the police to Kamataje. Are you still shameless?" Despite everyone's contempt, Mephisto's expression did not change at all. He was originally the most shameless demon king in hell. More importantly, what he couldn't get, he would rather destroy it than let others get it. For demons, harming others without benefiting oneself is a matter of course. As soon as Mephisto finished speaking, a circle of golden sparks appeared in front of Wang Nanshuan. Then, the circle composed of golden sparks quickly grew larger, and a yellow figure loomed behind the circle. Mage Supreme. Wang Nanshuan took a breath and hurriedly drew out the power of the Black Heart demon and turned it into a black ball and shot it towards the space portal. Bang! As soon as the black ball reached the location of the portal, it exploded with a bang. The portal quickly collapsed amid violent vibrations. Before Wang Nanshuan could breathe a sigh of relief, sparks appeared again around him, and the rotation speed was much faster than before. Then, a yellow figure walked out of the portal. This figure, with gray hair and a gloomy face, gave people a very unpleasant feeling, but Wang Nanshuan breathed a sigh of relief. It was not Ancient One who came, but her eldest disciple, Cassius. Mephisto was stunned, and he shouted dissatisfied, "Why doesn't the Ancient One come? The Supreme Mage does not need to explain to you." Cassius glanced at Mephisto, gathered the magic whip and prepared to attack Wang Nanshuan. At this moment, a chain burning with flames hit him hard. Cassius hurriedly waved the magic whip and deflected the flame chain. The chain smashed the stone pillar next to it with a bang, and the gravel flew around. Mephisto shouted angrily, "Ghost Rider, what are you doing? Nothing can happen to Luo Shan." Johnny yelled while slamming the flames on Cassius. The Wind Demon told him that if anything happened to the Lord of Hell, Roseanne would die. Roseanne was his favorite woman and he would never let anything happen to him. Mephisto was almost furious. "At such an important time, you actually flirted with me. It's a pity that the spirit of revenge in Johnny is special and Mephisto cannot peel it off. In fact, he can't do anything now and is very frustrated. Go away." Cassius waved the magic whip and smashed the hellfire into pieces one after another. Then, he made a circle with one hand, and a circle of light appeared under Johnny's feet, and Johnny fell uncontrollably. At the critical moment, Feng Mo rushed over, picked up Johnny, and threw him towards Cassius. Cassius cast a spell with both hands, and a glass-like barrier appeared out of thin air. Johnny hit the barrier with a bang and fell down. Cassius controlled the barrier and was about to lock Johnny up. At this moment, a red flame rushed into Johnny's body. Johnny roared, the flames on his body surged, and he punched the barrier to pieces, turning into a butterfly and dissipating. But it was Wang Nanshuan who passed on the power of the spirit of vengeance to Johnny. With the support, Johnny's strength greatly increased, and he joined forces with the Wind Demon to fight Cassius. Spirit of vengeance, you not only robbed me of my contract, but also my spirit of vengeance. Mephisto was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Wang Nanshuan was too lazy to pay attention to him. As the last soul flew into his body, the small hell was about to be officially completed. Haha, it worked. Wang Nanshuan was overjoyed. At this critical moment, suddenly, everything around him stopped, like the pause button on a movie. Whether it was the ferocious Johnny, the angry Mephisto, or the excited Wang Nanshuan, they were all stuck there. Time pauses. Ancient Yi, did you do it on purpose? As the Lord of Hell, Wang Nanshuan's consciousness was not stopped. He cursed with mental power, not stopping in the morning or at night, but stopped just when he was about to succeed. This was obviously a trick on him. At this moment, Wang Nanshuan's eyes flashed as he appeared in a quaint hall. A bald woman with an elegant and calm temperament, wearing a yellow robe, was sitting there quietly holding a fan. There is no doubt that she is the one who suppresses all the gods in the world. In the world, the Supreme Mage Ancient One made countless demons fearful. The Supreme Mage raised his hand and said to Wang Nanshuan, "Please sit down, the new Lord of Hell." Wang Nanshuan glanced at the Supreme Mage and suddenly laughed. He sat down in front of the Supreme Mage and said, "You paused time at the last moment and invited me into the illusion again. Supreme Mage, do you want to negotiate with me?" Ji Yuyi did not answer directly. She looked at Wang Nanshuan with eyes that seemed to see through everything and said, "You are very special." Wang Nanshuan felt something in his heart, and said on the surface, "You mean that I am particularly handsome?" Ji Yuyi smiled slightly and said, "Maybe it means you are particularly thick-skinned." Wang Nanshuan's head was full of black lines, and he said, "Supreme Mage, tell me, what are the conditions? Don't go too far. The small hell is about to be completed. If I am willing, I can hurt both the earth and the earth. You should know that I am barefoot and not afraid of you. Wearing shoes. You are indeed barefoot," Ancient One said. "Not only are you special, this world is also special." Wang Nanshuan asked, "What's so special?" Ji Yuyi raised his fan a little, and a magic light curtain appeared. Within the light curtain, a wise bald man in a wheelchair was teaching a group of students. Wang Nanshuan narrowed his eyes slightly. "This is Professor Charles. There were no these mutants a year ago, and then they suddenly appeared, and everyone thought their existence was normal. Only a few people noticed something was wrong. Ancient One said, situations like this have occurred 4 times this year. In other words, 4 worlds have merged into this world. Mutants and ghost riders all appeared after the fusion of worlds. World fusion. Wang Nanxuan became more and more shocked. Ji Yu nodded, and she said, yes, world fusion. This year, I have been searching for the truth, but found nothing. The only thing I can be sure of is that world fusion is not over, it will continue. No one knows what this world will be like in the future. You are a very special person, so I can let you keep your little hell, but I have 2 conditions. Quote. Wang Nanxuan said, let's talk about it. Let me declare in advance that I will only accept conditions that are not excessive. After finally becoming the devil, I can no longer wrong myself like before. Ji Yuyi looked at Wang Nanxuan and said, you cannot harm humans on a large scale, let alone do things that may destroy humans. Do you think I'm the great devil who destroys humanity? Well, I really am the great devil. Wang Nanxuan said, don't worry, I won't do such a thing even if you don't say it. The Lord of Hell may not be the great demon king. Ancient One shook his head and said, by the way, after the small hell is established, your hell will be related to the earth. If the earth is destroyed, your hell will be affected to a certain extent. A certain impact. Wang Nanxuan narrowed his eyes and asked, Supreme Mage, did you do anything secretly? If I had moved my hands or feet, it would not have been a fundamental impact. To put it simply, it would have been affected by the space storm. Ancient One said, second, you cannot use violence or killing to collect souls. You can only use contracts to make people voluntarily give their souls to you, similar to Mephisto. Yes, but the souls of those who offend me belong to me. Also, if the soul happens to appear, I am qualified to intercept it. Of course, a small amount. Wang Nanxuan thought for a while and nodded in agreement. This condition was not a big problem because this was the Marvel world and it was not difficult to get humans to sign a soul contract. Hulk and Abomination are fighting, and the building is about to collapse. You are asked to sign a contract, and you will use your soul after death in exchange for escaping. Will you sign it? The Chitauri are attacking New York and the entire city is about to be destroyed. Will you sign or not? Good. Ji Yuyi did not object. She raised her hand, and golden light intertwined a contract in the air. If you violate the contract, your little hell will collapse. Supreme Mage, these are the only 2 conditions. Wang Nanxuan was a little suspicious. These 2 conditions were so relaxed as if he was Ji Yuyi's illegitimate son. Did the Supreme Mage see something? Or, what's wrong with her? Ji Yuyi smiled and said, if you think it's too little, I can add a few more, I don't mind. Wang Nanxuan said, add one more thing. After signing the contract, if you take action against me or plot against me secretly, then the contract will be invalid. Ji Yuyi glanced at Wang Nanxuan and said, okay. Then, Wang Nanxuan and Ji Yuyi pressed their fingerprints on the contract at the same time. The contract lit up with a dazzling golden light, then split into 2 and flew into Wang Nanxuan and Ji Yuyi's bodies respectively. The contract is officially established. Wang Nanxuan breathed a sigh of relief and it was done. At this time, Ji Yuyi said, your hell is new. What it will develop into in the future is up to you. Wang Nanxuan was a little surprised. I decide on my own. Yes, most hells are full of chaos, evil, and killing, but that doesn't mean all hells are like that. Hell is an integral part of the universe, and it has its own responsibilities. Ji Yu nodded and said, the first step you have to do is to give yourself a name for hell, the new Lord of Hell. Wang Nanxuan smiled and said, no rush, let's call it Rebirth Hell for now. In the future, it will have a more suitable name. Ancient Yi and Wang Nanxuan communicated with their consciousness. They talked for a long time, and only 1 second passed in the real world. Mephisto saw that time stopped and laughed. Boy, if you want to steal my things, if you have a dream, you will soon know how scary that old woman Ji Yuyi is. This is the consequence of opposing me. As soon as Mephisto finished speaking, the surrounding time was restored. Wang Nanxuan completely constructed a small hell. He was connected to the main body without any obstacles. The main body could transfer power to him at any time, and he could also transfer things back to the rebirth hell at any time. The refreshed Wang Nanxuan asked with a puzzled look on his face, what's the end? Lao Mo, What's the end? Why didn't I see anything? Mephisto was dumbfounded and roared. Ancient One, why didn't you stop him? Are you teaching me how to do things? Ancient One's cold voice came down from the sky, and then she said to Cassius, don't pay attention to this matter anymore, bring the Ghost Rider back to Kamatage. Is teacher. Although Cassius was puzzled, he still nodded respectfully, and then he swung the magic whip hard at the Ghost Rider. Johnny wanted to dodge, but the flames on his body suddenly became uncontrollable, which made him unable to move and was tied up by the magic whip. Johnny glared at Wang Nanchuan. Those uncontrollable flames belong to this guy. Wang Nanchuan said, only by following the Supreme Mage can you escape the shackles of Mephisto. Don't worry about Luo Shan, I will help you take care of her. Johnny growled and wanted to say something. At this time, Cassius cast magic, and the flames on Johnny's body were quickly extinguished. Then, his flesh and blood regenerated, and a melancholy handsome boy appeared in everyone's eyes. Cassius glanced at Wang Nanchuan and was about to return to Karmatage. At this moment, Wang Nanchuan's voice sounded in his ears, do you want eternal life? I can give it to you. Cassius paused for a moment, as if nothing happened, opened the portal, and took Johnny back to Karmatage. Mephisto was so angry that he was shaking all over. This time he suffered a big loss. Not only did he lose the St. Fengenza contract, but even the Ghost Rider was abducted. Feng Mo looked at Wang Nanchuan with admiration. This time he really got the right boss. Even Ji Yuyi couldn't help him. Mephisto took a deep breath and said to Wang Nanchuan with a smile on his face, young lord, do you want to cooperate? We can join forces to destroy the Ancient One and divide the earth. What do you think? Wang Nanchuan snorted coldly. He is the only demon king on earth now. Why would he let other demon kings come in to snatch souls? It is better to have fun when everyone is happy than to have fun alone. Mephisto said without giving up, Ancient One must be plotting against you. If you cooperate with her, you will definitely die. That old woman is ruthless and countless demons have died at her hands. Wang Nanchuan said, this is a good thing. With her blocking you, I can happily harvest souls on the earth. Mephisto was speechless. To be honest, he couldn't figure out why Ji Yuyi reached an agreement with Wang Nanchuan. It wasn't magic. Those who eat alone will not end well. Mephisto lowered his face and said, your magic power is so pure, you should be a new lord of hell. Being new means being weak. Aren't you afraid that we will join forces to besiege your hell? I'm so scared. Wang Nanchuan looked disdainful. His hell had just been born and was protected by the fog of space. In a short period of time, other hells would not be able to find him unless he committed suicide. Of course, only in a short period of time, hell cannot tolerate the weak. If Wang Nanchuan cannot obtain a large number of souls to strengthen hell, what awaits him will only be devoured by other lords. What else Mephisto wanted to say? Wang Nanchuan waved his hand and said, I am eager to experience the American characteristics, so I won't talk nonsense to you. By the way, Lao Mo, do you want this thing? Wang Nanchuan thought of something and took out the statue of the Black Heart Demon from his arms. The Black Heart Demon cursed angrily when he heard his name. Mephisto was stunned. Are you willing to give him back to me? Wang Nanchuan said matter-of-factly. Of course I do, this guy is obviously a cheater, and giving it back to you will only be good for me, and there will be no harm. Mephisto and the Black Heart Demon are both speechless. What you said really makes sense. I am completely speechless. Mephisto said with a dark face, bring it. Wang Nanchuan said, this is not possible. Although it is a scam, it still has to be sold for some money, 10,000 souls. 10,000 souls. Where are you robbing? Do you know how difficult it is to get souls since the rise of Ancient One? Mephisto cursed a little jumpily. Souls that die naturally can either go to heaven or go to hell and turn into different demons according to their sins. If we lords want to get some souls, we can only sign contracts, develop believers, or go to hell. Tough fishing in the river Styx. 10,000 souls. I don't want to deceive so many souls even if I work hard for several years. Quote. That's your thing. Wang Nanchuan said. Okay, 1,000 souls, but I have to choose them myself. Mephisto said. Dream, I can't give you my collection. 100 inferior souls, that wasteful thing is only worth that much. The so-called inferior souls refer to souls that have been tortured and lost their spirituality. In the eyes of the devil, such souls are just basic materials. The black-hearted demon was furious, and he roared, "What did you say? I am worth 100 souls, and am I still inferior?" Mephisto said very frankly, "No, you are not worth 100 souls. I bought you back just for my face." The black heart demon almost went berserk. If he was not controlled by Wang Nanshuan, he would definitely fight with Mephisto. Wang Nanshuan ignored the black heart demon and continued to bargain with Mephisto. Finally, the two parties reached a price: pick 5 human souls and 500 inferior souls. Wang Nanshuan secretly rejoiced. It worked. Mephisto has some special souls in his hands. They can give me a lot of help. Mephisto was also secretly happy. If I succeed, I will manipulate the souls. As long as those souls enter this kid's hell, I will be able to lock his location. By then, he will be dead. Wang Nanshuan and Mephisto looked at each other and smiled together. Then, Wang Nanshuan raised his hand to write a contract and said, "Sign the contract." Good. Mephisto looked at the contract carefully, and after a moment, he pressed his finger on the signature, and the contract was officially established. Wang Nanshuan threw the statue of the black heart demon to Mephisto and said, "Soul." Mephisto didn't waste any time. His right hand turned into a claw and grabbed it in the void. 500 souls turned into a ball of black air and appeared in his hand. Ordinary souls were weak and the defensive shield would not stop them. These are 500 inferior souls. As for my collection, I will give you 5 minutes to choose. Mephisto threw the black energy to Wang Nanshuan, and then he summoned a magic light curtain, which contained his treasured souls, some of which were famous figures in history, including several kings. To be honest, if it weren't for the plot against Wang Nanshuan, Mephisto would never have let the other party choose from these collections. In order to obtain these souls, he had put in a lot of effort. These souls are really good. Hey, is this guy here? Wang Nanshuan was not polite and carefully identified these souls. Soon, he selected 5 souls that were useful to him. As the Lord of Hell, he could vaguely sense the memories of these souls. Every time Wang Nanshuan picked one, Mephisto's expression became uglier. When Wang Nanshuan finished picking, he immediately put away the light curtain. These souls were all his treasures. Boy, let's play slowly in the future. Mephisto left a sad word and disappeared. Wang Nanshuan snorted coldly and put away the 5 selected souls. Then, he forcefully shook the black energy in his hand, and the 500 souls instantly turned into 500 soul gold coins, with a human face wailing on each gold coin. Soul gold coins, hard currency in Hell and Dark World, can be stored for a long time. Mephisto sensed this scene and cursed bitterly. He knew that his plan had been seen through by the other party. What a huge loss. It's all your fault, you're a cheater. I'm going to teach you a lesson today. Mephisto spread his fire on the black heart demon. If it weren't for this guy, how could he have suffered heavy losses? Mephisto, I will definitely kill you and become the Lord of Hell. The black-hearted demon roared angrily, and the father and son once again began their daily routine of, father is kind and son is filial. In Shengfenganza village, Wang Nanshuan thought for a while and used magic to contact the Supreme Mage. Supreme Mage, can you help me? Ji Yuyi did not refuse. She said, the favor must be returned. Can. Wang Nanshuan took out 100 soul gold coins and said, 100 soul gold coins, help me get 4 regular identities. My name is Andrew Wang. In addition, help me wash these 5 souls and remove Morpheus. Entrusted hands and feet. As the Lord of Hell, Wang Nanshuan's real name has incredible power, so he needs a pseudonym. Mephisto is also a pseudonym, and that guy also used the name Mephisto. Lord, the identity certificate is not that expensive. It can be exchanged for 1 soul gold coin. Because of Kamatage, souls are very valuable on Earth. 1 soul is at least 100,000 US dollars. Feng Mo heard this and said hurriedly. It could be heard from his tone that he was very poor. Thinking of something, Feng Mo added, Lord, if you come forward, the people in the underground world will definitely surrender to you. I have no interest in dealing with those scum. Wang Nanshuan smiled disdainfully and said, what I want is a completely innocent and completely formal identity. In addition, this is to help you clear your name so that you will not be hunted down again in the future. Feng Mo's eyes lit up and he said gratefully, thank you, Lord. Wang Nanchuan raised his hand and placed it a little between Feng Mo's eyebrows. The flaming phoenix mark of rebirth in hell appeared on Feng Mo's eyebrows. This meant that he had officially become a person reborn in hell, or a demon. Owner. Feng Mo was so excited that he immediately knelt down and saluted. He was considered a temporary worker before, but now he has officially entered the establishment of rebirth hell. Being a subordinate of a demon king is what many demons dream of. Not to mention, this demon king is super awesome. Get up and call me boss from now on. Wang Nanchuan said. At this time, a small portal appeared next to him, and then, 4 drivers' licenses flew out. At the same time, Wang Nanchuan's 100 soul gold coins and 5 souls flew into the portal. It's so efficient, Supreme Mage. I will help you recommend clients in the future. Wang Nanchuan, or Andrew Wang, grabbed the driver's license and said with a smile. Ji Yuyi was too lazy to pay attention to this guy, washed the 5 souls and sent them back to Andrew. Then, the portal quickly disappeared. Andrew sent the 5 souls back to the rebirth hell. After thinking about it, the soul rushed into the projection with a ball of blood. The projection quickly transformed into a real flesh and blood body. At the same time, the spirit of revenge was completely swallowed and became a part of Andrew. From now on, Andrew on earth is the true body, and the one in hell is the body of the devil with most of the power. For other demon kings, this is very dangerous, but it is nothing to Andrew, because the 2 hells are connected, and if he is willing, he can extract the body of the demon king and the power of rebirth in hell at any time. As for why not come directly? The reason is simple. He is too powerful. If he comes directly, even if he does nothing, it will cause a large number of humans to collapse. The main body comes here to have fun. Andrew smiled and said to Feng Mo, let's go to New York. No, let's go to casino first. I want to investigate how depraved America is. Next, there are only 2 things Andrew has to do: enjoy life and obtain a soul. Obtaining a soul is to enhance strength, and only with enough strength can you continue to enjoy it. After finally entering the earth, you can't treat yourself badly. Degenerate, really depraved. In the presidential suite of a hotel in the casino, Andrew stood on the balcony and looked at the feasting below, with a sad look on his face. We had obviously planned to go to New York for business 3 days ago, but in the end, we spent day after day having fun. It's not his fault. There are so many beauties around him, and there are a group of people who are doing everything possible to make him happy. He has been alone for another year, and it is really difficult not to fall. What? Why are beauties surrounding him? Of course it's because he has money, but he has no choice but to win every bet. Even if he doesn't have money, it's hard. Because he won too much, the casino owners even wrote checks to beg him not to come again. Of course, there were also those who wanted to do it hard, and some even wanted to rob Andrew. These people all disappeared mysteriously. They were sent to the rebirth hell together with their souls, and they worked hard for the modernization of the rebirth hell. Well, they were the ones who worked 24 hours a day without wages. Business still needs to be done. I am the target of public criticism now. I have no strength and will be swallowed up by those demon kings sooner or later. Andrew looked far away in the direction of New York and murmured to himself, Dr. Doom, and Tony Stark, we will meet soon. The Doom Group is a well-known emerging technology group in Manhattan in recent years. Its chairman, Victor Von Doom, is a super genius in technology and business. It only took him a few years to develop the Doom Group. It has become a listed company and even owns a small space station in space. The problem is, Dr. Doom is not happy. He came to the United States to open a company, not to make money, but to resurrect his mother with the help of high technology. Dr. Doom's mother Cynthia is a gypsy witch. In order to protect her country, she made a deal with Mephisto. As a result, the country was not saved, but her soul fell into the hands of Mephisto. Did I choose the wrong path? I should study magic. The cold-looking Dr. Doom sat in the office, frowning. With current technology, it is simply impossible to break through hell to save Cynthia. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. With your talent, your future in learning magic is limitless. Who? Dr. Doom was startled. He looked up suddenly and saw an oriental man wearing a trench coat and a mysterious temperament sitting opposite him. Andrew smiled and said, Don't be nervous. Although I am the devil, I don't eat people. Even if I want to eat them, I won't eat them raw. I will add more chili peppers. Demon King, your words succeeded in making me even more nervous. After all, Dr. Doom is not an ordinary person. He took a deep breath and asked, "Excuse me, what is the purpose of Mr. Demon King coming to my office?" Andrew glanced at Dr. Doom appreciatively and said, "To make a deal with you." "I don't make deals with the devil," Dr. Doom said coldly. "People who make deals with the devil never end well, such as my mother. It has a bad reputation and it's hard to do business." Andrew sighed and opened his right hand. The soul of a witch fell asleep in his palm. "You really don't want to do it?" "Cynthia." Dr. Doom's expression changed. He stood up suddenly and asked, "Are you Mephisto?" "No, I snatched this from Mephisto," Andrew said. "It's your decision whether you want to make this deal or not." Dr. Doom's breathing became rapid. He looked at his mother's soul and asked in a deep voice, "What do you want?" Andrew said, "Help me do 3 things in the future. Don't worry, what I want you to do will not harm you and your mother. By the way, your Doom group will be given to me as a gift." "Can I help you with 3 things?" Dr. Doom was a little surprised. As for the Doom group, he didn't take it to heart. With his wisdom, it was easy to make money. In fact, Andrew didn't care too much, so he said it was just adding to his head. "This deal focuses on 3 things. Dr. Doom has endless potential, and his future achievements will not even be worse than those of Doctor Strange." Dr. Doom did not hesitate and nodded. "Okay, I agree to your conditions. As long as you are not plotting against me, I will definitely help you with 3 things in the future. We Hellbenders believe more in contracts. If you violate the contract, your soul will belong to me." Andrew snapped his fingers, and a contract appeared in front of Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom read the contents of the contract in great detail before pressing his fingerprint. The contract officially came into effect. Andrew sent Cynthia's soul to Dr. Doom and said, "She has my magic power. Within 1 year, she can exist in the world as a soul. As for 1 year later, you can handle it yourself. In addition, your blood can awaken her, as long as you are biological. It's none of your trouble." Dr. Doom snorted. He now believed that Andrew was not Mephisto. If he were Mephisto, he would certainly not give Cynthia magic power. Andrew stood up and said, "I only want the shares you have on hand, and you can keep the other things for yourself." Dr. Doom reminded, "I don't have many shares. Also, Doom Group is a listed company, so the procedures are quite cumbersome, such as notifying the major directors, explaining to the Securities Regulatory Commission, etc. It will take some time to complete. My lawyer will contact you." Andrew nodded and disappeared from Dr. Doom, back to the casino to continue having fun, where a costume party was waiting for him. These days, even the devil needs lawyers. Dr. Doom shook his head and couldn't wait to wake up his mother with blood. That afternoon, Dr. Doom's girlfriend, the future Invisible Woman, one of the Fantastic Four, Susan Stone, looked at Dr. Doom in astonishment and asked, "You gave away your company shares. Are you going to return to Eastern Europe?" "Yes, I can't say too much about the specifics. Susan, come back with me and I will make you the queen." Dr. Doom nodded. He had talked with Cynthia and was ready to give up everything and return to Latvia to learn magic. Only in this way could his mother be resurrected or reincarnated as a human. "I don't want to leave New York. Victor, are you being controlled by someone? Why do you have such crazy ideas?" Susan refused, and Dr. Doom tried to persuade her several times, but failed to persuade Susan. In the end, the two broke up on bad terms. More than 10 days later, Dr. Doom completed all the procedures and hurried back to his hometown with his mother's soul. The story of the Divine Lord Doom has officially begun. Andrew's investment will be returned hundreds of times in the future. Putting aside Doom for the moment, this morning, Susan walked into the chairman's office and asked the slender figure standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, "Mr. Wong, are you looking for me?" Although Andrew has Dumu's share transfer letter in his hand, the procedures have not been completed and the board of directors has not been convened. Therefore, Susan's title is Mr. Wong. To be precise, Andrew is not the boss of Dumu Group yet. Andrew turned around and glanced at Susan, with a flash of appreciation in his eyes. He was truly worthy of the famous blonde sweetheart. He said straight to the point, "Ms. Stone, I plan to promote you to the vice president of the group, so be prepared." Ah, Susan was shocked. The new boss actually wanted to promote her. The problem was that she was about to resign. She said tactfully, "Mr. Wong, the board of directors has some objections to the matter between you and Doom. More than just dissent, to be precise, it is very dissatisfied. Doom is the core of Doom Group." As soon as the news of his transfer of shares spread, the market value of Doom Group was directly cut in half. The directors were furious and were preparing to split the group and sell it. Lose, recover the loss. Little things. Andrew said. "The board of directors will meet at noon, you will come with me then." Susan hesitated. What's there to be hesitant about? Andrew smiled and said, "If you win the bet, you will be the vice president of the group. If you lose the bet, you will be kicked out. You were planning to resign anyway." Susan was a little embarrassed and asked, "Mr. Wong, do you have any way to convince those directors?" "I'm very good at persuading people. Okay, you can leave." Andrew said. Susan nodded, turned and left. She didn't have high hopes for Andrew's words. Those directors were demons who ate people but never spit out their bones. They would never let Andrew control the Doom Group. Susan isn't sad at all, poor Doom. Looking at Susan's infinitely beautiful back, Andrew shook his head. Susan didn't really love Doom. She had another person in her heart. She accepted Doom just because she needed a man's favor. Not long after Susan left, 4 men walked into Andrew's office. The leader was a middle-aged man who looked very wise. He was followed by the Wind Demon, the Earth Demon, and the Water Demon. Different from the previous abjection, the 3 demons are now wearing designer suits and high-end leather shoes. They look quite human-like. They have the temperament of a nouveau riche. The Earth Demon is so embarrassing that he didn't even cut off the sign. "You are here, Howard. How is the investment company going?" Andrew asked. Howard was one of the 5 souls he got from Mephisto, but his body was not original. In the casino, a red-eyed lawyer gambled his soul with Andrew, and then his body became owned by Howard. "The formalities are completed." Howard nodded first, and then complained, "Boss, I am the world's top scientist. It is a waste of talent to use me as a lawyer." Andrew smiled and said, "Don't be anxious. There will be many opportunities for you to perform in the future, but you may be outdone by your son." "That boy." Howard was very dissatisfied. He said, "Look at all the tidbits he has made. How can he look like a scientist at all? Were you different before you got married?" Andrew shook his head and asked, "Howard, I'm really curious. With your wisdom, why would you make a deal with Mephisto?" "There are many things that people are powerless to do." Howard didn't want to say more. He said, "What I made with Mephisto was just an ordinary transaction. Who knows, this transaction infected my soul with a dark breath, and he used this dark breath to fish me out of the river Styx. After that, I became his collection. God, I don't know how I lived these past 10 years. I was caught and tortured by him every once in a while. What's worse, he didn't let me study at all." Quote, "It seems that the latter makes you more resentful. Mephisto is an old man and he doesn't understand your value." Andrew smiled. Then he turned to look at the 3 demons and ordered, "Your future job is to use money to buy souls in casinos, hospitals and other places. I am a very talkative person and can wait for them to die before taking them away. Soul. The more souls you buy, the richer the rewards I will give you." Quote, "Boss, we must perform well." The 3 demons also stated that following Andrew these days is really enjoyable. It is completely different from hiding in Tibet in the past. Being able to follow the boss is their greatest luck. Andrew said, "Very good. When buying souls, if you meet your peers, that is, devil believers, deal with them directly. Dispose of it directly." The 3 demons were stunned, and the Wind Demon said, "Boss, this will anger other demon kings." "So what? I am the strongest demon king on earth, and all souls belong to me." Andrew said, "Besides, do you think that if you don't kill those believers, they won't be my enemy?" The 3 demons reacted, nodded and said, "Boss, we know what to do. You are my subordinates. You don't need to be afraid of anyone. I will give you the power, glory and wealth you want. However, the ugly words come first. All transactions must be voluntary. Also, no harm to mankind is allowed." Andrew said in a cold voice, "I believe you don't want to know what will happen if you disobey my orders." The 3 demons hurriedly lowered their heads and said, "We don't dare." Andrew waved his hand. "Go ahead. I will set performance standards for you every month. Don't let me down. As for the money, don't worry, I will keep transferring it to you. Yes. The three demons left respectfully. Howard looked at Andrew and said, except for the final intimidation, you are completely different from the other demon kings. Whether you are a human being or a devil, you must have some principles. Andrew shook his head and said, come to the board meeting with me. There will be a lot of documents for you to deal with. Okay, I'll make a guest appearance for 2 more days. Howard winked and said, I am familiar with this place in New York. Do you want to go and have fun together tonight? Maria has gone to heaven and I am single now. How dare you despise your own son? Andrew complained. He said, let's do business first, now is the period when my career is on the rise. Board of Directors. From the very beginning, the directors did not look at Andrew. Ned, an investor from a bank, said directly, Mr. Wong, you are not from the Doom Group. You can just watch this meeting. The shares in your hand, it will be purchased at market price. That's right, just watch and don't say anything. The directors all said that this incident caused them a lot of losses, and they naturally did not have a good attitude towards Andrew. Andrew smiled and said, originally I wanted to be polite, but since you are so rude, I won't pretend anymore. You want to be rude to us? Ned looked disdainful, and the others also sneered, not taking Andrew seriously at all. Susan, who was standing behind Andrew, couldn't help but shake her head. In her opinion, Andrew was a bit ignorant. Only Howard looked at these directors with pity. They had no idea who they had offended. Andrew stopped talking nonsense and his eyes lit up with fire. As soon as those directors came into contact with the fire in his eyes, all the bad things they had done immediately came to mind. Take Ned, for example. He once betrayed his brothers and used loans to kill hundreds of innocent people. Now, these bad things are emerging one by one. None of these guys are good. Andrew's eyes flashed with fire, and the directors' souls were instantly ignited by the fire of hell. This is the judging eye of the vengeful spirit. Don't want. All the directors shouted in horror and pain. At this moment, the flames disappeared, and the directors collapsed on their seats covered in sweat, their eyes full of fear, and even their muscles were twitching. Susan was stunned and didn't understand why this happened. She couldn't see the fire in Andrew's eyes because of her position. Andrew stood up and ordered, Howard, sign a contract with them and buy their group shares at the market price. These shares will be recorded in your and Feng Mo's names. In addition, Doom Group has changed its name to Rebirth Group. You will handle the specific procedures. Susan, I am ready to take over the company. I don't want to cause chaos. Quote. Howard, a part-time lawyer, nodded and said, yes, boss. Susan asked hesitantly, Mr. Wong, they don't seem to have agreed to sell the shares. Promise, I agree to everything. I will sign the contract immediately and give the shares to Mr. Wong for free. Ned shouted in horror. He just wanted to stay as far away from Andrew as possible. The other directors were also the same. They were filled with fear. Let alone going against Andrew in the future, they would tremble with fear when they heard the name Andrew Wong. Not only that, the previous scene will torture them for the rest of their lives, unless they are willing to make up for their mistakes. Free gift. You think I'm a bandit? Andrew was very dissatisfied. I will not rob you. I will buy the shares you have at the market price. As for the money to buy the shares, you will lend me interest-free loans. Howard complained. What's the difference between this and robbery? How can civilized people call robbery robbery? This is called justice and punishment. Andrew shrugged, turned and left the office. He made an appointment with the owner of the Daily Bugle to discuss the acquisition. If I want to get more souls, I need a media group that belongs to me. Otherwise, how will the people know the truth? If they don't know the truth, how can they be afraid? If they are not afraid, how can they sell their souls to me? Andrew secretly thought, I wonder what the Spider-Man in this world is like. Tobey Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, or the Virgin Spider-Man who killed Aunt May. While Andrew was discussing the purchase price with the boss of the Daily Bugle, someone was discussing him. This was normal. After all, he didn't know how to keep a low profile at all. Andrew Wong appeared in the casino more than half a month ago. He won consecutive bets and never lost at all. The money lost to him by major casinos was at least hundreds of millions of dollars. A white man with thin hair reported to the one-eyed black man on the computer screen. Many people have gone to look for trouble with him, but they have all disappeared. They must have been killed. More than 10 days ago, Dr. Doom of Doom Group presented the shares to Andrew Wong. In addition, at noon today, the directors of Doom Group sold the shares to him at the market price. We suspect that this person is a psychic with hypnotic abilities. Quote, "Why superpowers and not mutants?" Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., asked. When he mentioned mutants, his tone was obviously not good. The reason is simple. He cannot control mutants, which means that the world is not safe. He has spent many days in the casino. The casino is the territory of the Hellfire Club. If he is a mutant, the Black King will definitely send someone to recruit him. Level 7 Agent Phil Coulson said that the three major factions of mutants, the moderate X-Men, the Extremist Brotherhood, and the elite Hellfire Club, in this world, the Hellfire Club is still there. That makes sense. Nick Fury thought for a while and said, I have to be busy with another thing recently. I will leave this Andrew King to you. Collect evidence, send people to understand his abilities, and then arrest him. Andrew is a billionaire after all, and he needs evidence before he can act. If he was just an ordinary person, Nick Fury would definitely capture him for interrogation. Coulson said, his abilities are very special, and I asked Melinda to help me. Melinda is not free. Let Natasha go, she happens to be watching a basketball game in New York. Nick Fury said, after capturing Andrew Wong, transfer his funds to S.H.I.E.L.D's secret account, not to the public account. Coulson knew what Nick Fury meant. He hesitated and nodded. Understood. At night, under the slightly dim light, Andrew sent Susan home, who had been working overtime until now. The purchase of the Daily Bugle had almost been discussed, but there was a lot of work to be done. After all, it was a big newspaper, and there were even own TV station. The owner of the Daily Bugle originally didn't want to sell it, but he had no choice but to give it too much. By the way, I am a demon king, why do I have to work overtime? This is unscientific. Andrew secretly complained that after the initial preparations were completed, he had to find someone to help him control the rebirth group. He was here to enjoy, not to work. At this time, Andrew noticed that Susan beside him was hesitant to speak, and asked with a smile, "Is there anything you want to ask me?" Yes. Susan nodded and asked, "Mr. Wong, this may be a little offensive, are you a mutant?" "Call me Andrew. I know what you mean. I'm not a mutant. Doom will give me the shares because I made a deal with him, a completely fair deal." Andrew said, "As for those directors, Susan, there is a legend of the Ghost Rider in Texas, have you heard of it?" Susan said, "I've heard some. It seems like a cowboy burning with fire, looking for evildoers to be judged." Ghost Rider started out as an angel of God. Andrew told the story about Ghost Rider, and then said, "If I said that I am Ghost Rider, the reason why those directors are so afraid is because I use the eye of judgment to scare them, would you believe it?" Susan smiled and said, "Andrew, I'm a scientist, although I think it would be cool to date the Ghost Rider." Andrew smiled and said, "I ordered a Harley motorcycle online. When it is delivered, I will take you for a ride. By then, you may change your mind." Susan said, "I may not be free. My boss has given me a lot of work recently. On the first day I worked for him, I worked overtime until now." "Your boss is really hateful." "Well, your boss seems to be me," Andrew said pretendingly, and both of them laughed. At this time, they saw several tattooed men in front of them beating two homeless people in rags. Susan, who had a strong sense of justice, immediately stepped forward and shouted, "Stop, what are you doing?" A tattooed man turned his head and looked at Susan greedily and said, "We are driving away monsters, what's the problem?" "Monster." Andrew and Susan were both stunned. They lowered their heads and found that of the two homeless men, one had a particularly big head and was covered with veins, which made him look particularly ferocious. The other had fish scales on his face, which was very strange. When the two homeless men saw Andrew and the two looking over, they quickly put on their cloaks, got up and tried to escape, but a few tattooed men refused to let them go and kicked them back to the ground. "Stop or don't blame me for calling the police." Susan took out her cell phone and threatened. Her words angered the tattooed men. They came around aggressively. Susan was startled and couldn't help but retreat. At this time, a tall figure appeared in front of her. "Roll," Andrew shouted. Several tattooed men were suddenly filled with fear and turned around in panic. One of them was so frightened that he fell to the ground with a thud. Susan blinked. The boss's aura was too strong, right? Having said that, I feel really safe with my boss. Seeing the tattooed man running away, the two homeless men breathed a sigh of relief. They got up and bowed gratefully to Andrew and Susan, then ran towards the dark alley next to them. Susan sighed. Mutants are pitiful, and mutants who fail to mutate are even more pitiful. Andrew was surprised. A mutant who failed to mutate. Yes, not every mutant can successfully awaken. About 20% of mutants will fail to mutate and have major flaws and weak abilities. For example, the two just now, their official scientific name is Epsilon-level mutants people. Susan nodded and said, in the past few years, the life of mutants has become increasingly difficult. Other mutants are okay and can hide themselves, but those mutants who failed to mutate are in misery. Many of them have been kicked out of their homes and lost their lives. Work and become a homeless person. Thinking of something, Susan explained, I have studied mutant genes, so I know a little more. 20% of mutants who failed to mutate. Andrew's eyes lit up. Whose soul is the best to cheat? Ahem, it is best to make a contract with those who have no hope, and those mutants who failed have no hope. I remember there was a mutant who could disable the X gene. Oh, by the way, there happens to be a mutant expert in my hell. Andrew secretly thought that those failed mutants would definitely be willing to exchange their souls after death for returning to normal. By then, he might be able to count the souls until his hands cramped. There are not many mutants in this world. Rebirth in hell. In just over half a month, the rebirth hell has become completely different. Factories have sprung up from the ground. A large number of demons corroded by demonic energy are working overtime to build factories under the command of a dwarf. These factories include robot manufacturing factories, large steel plants using volcanoes as energy, and various parts factories. It is obvious that Andrew wants to make robots. The biggest credit for the factory being able to rise so quickly is Andrew himself. He has control over this hell. Building a factory couldn't be easier. However, he cannot make various precision instruments. He needs to buy them from the earth or bring people with him. Made by myself. There are too few workers and the efficiency is too slow. Andrew, the Demon King's body, shook his head. Currently, there are only a few hundred demons in the rebirth hell. He got them from the casino, which is far from enough. Boss, are you looking for me? The dwarf in ghost form floated in front of Andrew and asked respectfully. His name is Bolivar Trask. He is a scientist. He believes that mutants will replace humans in the future, so he develops sentinel robots to exterminate mutants. In order to succeed in research and development, the dwarf experimented on mutants. When Mystique Raven found out, she shot him dead at the peace conference. Trask made a deal with Mephisto during his lifetime, so his soul was collected by Mephisto after his death and now falls into Andrew's hands. Andrew asked, I would like to ask, is there any way for you to strip the X gene from mutants? Mutant. Trask's eyes lit up. I'm not tired of talking about this anymore. He said, Boss, it's difficult to strip off the X gene. It's not a foreign object. The best way is to kill all the mutants and leave no one behind. Andrew was speechless and asked, do you hate mutants? Trask said righteously, no, everything I do is to prevent humans from being replaced by mutants. That's disgusting. Andrew snorted and said, there is a mutant named Leech. He can eliminate the abilities of mutants around him, but it is not permanent. He will recover after leaving his side. If I give you his blood, can you study it? How to completely eliminate the X gene. The Leech is the little boy in X-Men 3. Worthington Industries used his blood to develop an antidote for mutants. However, it was only effective for a short period of time. The United States had not verified the antidote beforehand. Of course, for them, this is a normal operation. At present, Worthington Industries should not have developed an antidote. Of course, even if it does, Andrew will not cheat souls with short-term potions. He is not as bottomless as Mephisto. Are there such mutants? Trask's eyes lit up. He thought for a while and said, permanent elimination is unlikely. However, I can design a restraining device and wear it on my body to suppress the X gene and turn the mutants back into normal humans. Andrew touched his chin and asked, Restrictor. Do you think those mutants who have failed to mutate and live miserable lives would be willing to exchange their souls after death for such a restrainer? Only then did Trask understand what Andrew was thinking, and he said, there should be many people who are willing to, exchange high technology for human souls. Why does it feel weird? Because the painting style is biased. Andrew complained. He said, there are a lot of problems with the prohibition device. More importantly, it may be cracked by others. It is impossible for us to register a patent. You can use a chip to replace the restrainer, but it will take a lot of time. Trask said, Boss, can't your demon power suppress the X gene? I can use a curse to make them lose their mutant abilities, but releasing a permanent curse on a large scale is a bit difficult, even for me. At this point, Andrew suddenly thought, wait a minute, if there is a special medium, my consumption will be greatly reduced. Trask asked, special medium? Yes, Trask, can you extract the factors from the blood of leeches that disable mutant abilities, and copy them in large quantities? Those factors can be used as my medium. Andrew said excitedly. Using those factors to activate the curse can easily suppress the mutant's X gene. No problem, but it will take some time and the appropriate equipment. Trask replied confidently that although he was from a bygone era, his wisdom was not outdated. Decades ago, Trask developed a portable instrument that could identify mutants. After his death, this technology was lost, and those scientists have not been able to replicate it until now. Very good. I'll have people get the leech's blood and instruments. You can start researching it as soon as possible and exchange the curse for the soul. This style will suddenly become normal. Andrew smiled and said that the combination of technology and magic seems to be very promising. In fact, Asgard is taking this route. Andrew secretly thought, I have a lot of hell runes in my hands. I need to study them carefully. This can also improve my strength. Chapter 11. The painting style is indeed normal. Teslac smiled and said, Boss, Teslac Industries should still be there after I die. They must have made many improvements to the Sentinel robots over the past few decades. Can you help me get their research information? No problem, I'm also very interested in the Sentry robot. Andrew said that the Sentry robots almost killed all mutants, so he was naturally interested. Teslac was very happy. He thought of something and asked, Boss, when will the power plant be built? The volcanic energy is too violent and is not suitable for use as energy source for robots. Don't worry, a new type of energy is about to be born. Andrew smiled and said, in this era, there are also geniuses. Teslac said with a look of dissatisfaction, really? That's going to be a good experience. In the real world, after Andrew sent Susan home, he called Feng Mo and Howard, you go to Alcatraz Island in San Francisco. There is a laboratory called Worthington there. You bring their research data and leech data. Steal all the blood from me. Feng Mo, you are in charge of infiltration. Howard, you are in charge of the computer part. Is there any problem? Quote. Feng Mo immediately said, no problem, it's a small matter. Of course, no problem. I was once a top agent. Howard laughed, and Andrew said with disdain, you call yourself that, right? Go ahead and try not to make any noise. After stealing the Worthington laboratory, you can go to Teslac Industries for a walk. Teslac wants the latest research on the Sentinel robot. Results. Good. Feng Mo and Howard nodded and took a private plane to San Francisco. What? Why didn't Andrew do it himself? Are you kidding me? How could you, the mighty Demon King, do everything yourself? The wind demon can turn into an all-pervasive wind, and Howard is the top scientist. The two teamed up and quickly got what Andrew wanted. Andrew sent it to Rebirth Hell. Now, it's just waiting for Trask's research. Once the research is successful, Andrew can at least harvest the souls of tens of thousands of failed mutants, making a huge profit. In a blink of an eye, the time has come to a sunny April, and the annual Apex Award ceremony is about to be held. This year's winner is Playboy Tony Stark. In a street tea house downstairs from Stark Group, Andrew was drinking tea while checking the resumes of job applicants on his laptop. Soon, he saw a familiar face. Natalie Rushman. Huh. Andrew shook his head, refused directly, and gave the reason. He looks too immodest and can easily affect the company's atmosphere. Andrew took a sip of tea and thought to himself, I hope S.H.I.E.L.D. will send someone to arrest me soon, so that I can have a few more free employees in hell. Looking at the Stark Tower not far away, Howard looked a little dazed. He asked Andrew, "Boss, why do you come here to drink tea?" "Bring you here to meet your son. He likes the cheeseburger downstairs very much. He often runs down to buy it himself at noon. I heard it tastes better this way." Andrew smiled. Before he finished speaking, the mustachioed Tony Stark walked towards the burger restaurant with the fat bodyguard Happy. Seeing his dull eyes and pale face, it was obvious that he had worked too hard last night. Howard Stark glanced at Tony Stark and said disdainfully, "What's so good about it?" "It's embarrassing. I think back then, I beat 5 beauties in one night and I was still energetic the next day." "Can you be embarrassed as well?" Andrew complained. He said, "See more, we may not be able to see you again in the future." "What?" Howard was stunned, and then asked nervously, "What's going on?" "Tony's life is in danger." "You still say you don't love your son?" Andrew smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's nothing serious. He was just hit by a missile, kidnapped by terrorists, and has a big hole in his chest. He won't die." "Is this no big deal?" Howard hurriedly said, "Boss, since you know what will happen, let's stop this from happening quickly." "You can't stop him. This is a necessary experience for him. Don't worry, he will be fine. The boss is always watching him and no one can touch him." As Andrew spoke, he threw a magic spell on Tony. It was just a surveillance magic. Everything Tony saw, Andrew could also see. "Experience, boss." Howard was stunned for a moment, then looked at Tony Stark with complicated eyes and asked, "It sounds like my son will become a great man." Andrew didn't say much. "Maybe. Actually, I prefer him to be an ordinary person. The more brilliant his life, the shorter it is, just like Captain Rogers." Howard sighed. At this time, Tony Stark noticed his gaze full of fatherly love, and turned his head to look this way. He seemed a little unhappy and said a few words to Happy. Happy nodded, walked to Howard, and said coldly, "Mr. Stark asked me to tell you that your eyes are disgusting, and he doesn't like men." "Don't like men." Howard's face turned green, and Andrew laughed. This joke would make Howard laugh for at least 10 years. Howard snorted. "Tell your boss, he is the weakest Stark I have ever seen. He really embarrasses the Stark family." Happy said dissatisfied. "Sir, I can't pretend I haven't heard this." Andrew stood up and said, "Howard, let's go, there will be many opportunities in the future." Howard nodded and followed Andrew away. Happy did not stop him. He returned to Tony and conveyed Howard's previous words to Tony. "The weakest Stark." Tony's face was a little dark, and he said, "Hire me a fitness coach." "Ah, a beautiful woman." Happy complained, "Are you sure you won't get weaker as you practice?" Tony glared at Happy. "What are you talking about? I don't look decent." "Why don't I look decent?" Black Widow Natasha was a little crazy when she received the reply from the Rebirth group. Coulson looked her up and down and secretly complained, "There is nothing serious about it." Natasha shouted to Coulson, "Coulson, let's arrest that Andrew King directly." Coulson shook his head and said, "No, Andrew Wang's ability is very dangerous. I have gone to those directors." As soon as they heard Andrew Wang's name, they immediately trembled with fear. They didn't understand his ability. "Before, we couldn't act rashly." After thinking about it, Coulson said, "We changed to approach Susan Stone. She has a close relationship with Andrew Wang and should know a lot of information." "Okay." Natasha nodded and said, "Get this done quickly. Fury is deploying a big operation. I don't want to miss it. When I catch Andrew Wang, I will give that guy a good beating." Coulson smiled and said, "I'll pretend to be invisible." 3 days later, in the office of the chairman of Rebirth Group, Andrew and Howard were watching a live broadcast, the famous scene where Tony Stark went to the Middle East to sell Jericho missiles and was blown up by his own missile. Fortunately, Tony was wearing a special body armor, so he was not killed, but just passed out. Andrew looked at the gradually darkening magic light curtain and said, "Tony Stark's life has completely changed." Compared to Andrew, Howard was extremely nervous. "Boss, Tony really won't die." "Don't worry, you won't die," Andrew said. "By the way, remember to inform Jameson about Tony Stark's attack in the Middle East. We want to grab the headlines." Jonah Jameson, editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, is the one who blackmails Spider-Man in the newspaper every day in the movie. "Boss, I was wrong before. You are no different from other demon kings. Howard complained that it was okay not to save his son, but he actually used the news that his son was seriously injured to boost newspaper sales. Is this still humane? I am the devil. Andrew shrugged and said, if I tell you that I have established a company overseas and am preparing to make money by taking advantage of the fluctuations in Stark Group's stock price, what do you think? Boss, how could you do this? Howard was very angry. You didn't tell me about the opportunity to make money. By the way, we can also use this matter to start a gambling game in the casino. You are indeed my biological father. Andrew complained. He said, stop talking about this. By the way, what are your attainments in artificial intelligence? Can you create an artificial intelligence system like Tony? Howard said confidently. It's not a big problem if I catch up on my homework. Most of the things Tony develops are based on my legacy. That's good. My negotiations with Twitter are not going well. They are unwilling to give up control. Andrew said. So, I want to open a short video company, focusing on mobile short videos. You are responsible for researching software and algorithms. I want to use it to defeat Twitter and gain control of the internet. You don't have to worry about funds, just burn it, I will provide it to you unconditionally and without any upper limit. Quote. Howard agreed. Although my main business is making weapons, I can also do this. Andrew said. It's okay if you like to research weapons. You can work in the company during the day and go back to hell to research weapons at night. Howard complained. Working 24 hours a day. You are indeed the devil. The disappearance of Tony Stark in the Middle East soon caused huge waves. Although the Stark Group denied it immediately, the stock price fell sharply. Susan looked at the news on her phone and sighed. Next to her, the news secretary Natasha asked, Susan, did you buy shares of Stark Group? Yesterday, Susan encountered a thief. Fortunately, Natasha came to help. After the two women talked, Natasha successfully became Susan's secretary. I didn't buy it, but I had a friend who did. He was unlucky and his investments always failed. It seems that this time is no exception. Susan shook her head. Who could have imagined that such a big thing would happen to the always stable Stark Group? He's so unlucky. Natasha looked at the chairman's office and said, in comparison, our boss has much better luck. Some people even gave him shares for free. Susan remembered what Andrew once said and smiled, because he is God's angel, the Ghost Rider. God's angel, Ghost Rider. Natasha was stunned. Why did it change from a spy drama to a myth drama? Tony Stark is a very tough man. Although he was seriously injured and imprisoned by terrorists, he did not choose to give up. In a cave, he used simple tools to complete a miracle, miniaturizing the arc reactor. The arc reactor is a controllable nuclear fusion reactor that can release 3 billion joules of energy per second. This is why Andrew released magic on Tony. Reborn in hell, Andrew watched Tony Stark put the glowing arc reactor into his chest, and asked Howard, Howard, can you imitate it? Howard said, yes, I developed the arc reactor. What Tony did was just miniaturize the reactor. Your arc reactor is just an exhibit. Your son successfully turned the exhibit into an epic-making invention. Teslac sneered. I have to say, he is indeed a genius. Howard said unconvinced. There is a problem with his reactor, which can cause palladium poisoning. I once developed a new element and used it to replace palladium. It is not only more efficient, but also has no side effects. Hurry up and get the new elements out. I want to use the arc reactor to solve the power problem in hell. Andrew said. Teslac, use the arc reactor as energy to build a robot for me. Boss, do you want a robot or a powered armor like Tony Stark? Teslac asked. In the light curtain, Tony Stark and Ethan were studying how to make the suit, which was Mark I. Andrew said. Of course it's a robot. I'm going to let the ghost possess the robot and control the robot to fight. Teslac and Howard's eyes lit up at the same time. The soul is attached to the robot, can this be realized? Of course you can, just build the magic runes into the robot. Andrew smiled and said, the souls who come to this hell in the future will start their second life in the form of mechanical life. Although he is a demon king, Andrew doesn't like demons at all, because demons are full of chaos and killing, and they are too ugly. Mechanical life. The two top scientists, Teslac and Howard, were very interested in this. The dwarf Teslac thought of something and sighed. mechanical life will be fairer than flesh and blood life. At the very least, there will be no dwarfs and no natural beings. Disability. We'll talk about this later, now is just the beginning. Andrew shook his head and said, build a batch of robots as soon as possible and they will be available soon. Teslac said excitedly, no problem, I will make myself a powerful body, at least 3 meters high. I have a body, and the suit suits me better. Howard said, I am going to personally design a suit, a top-notch suit. I want to use this suit to let Tony know that he will always be his father. Andrew smiled. You can also let him know that you don't like men. Howard has a lot of black streaks in his head. This dark history cannot be washed away, right? A few days later, Tony Stark escaped from the terrorists' lair wearing a simple Mark I. His friend Ethan died under the random gunfire of the terrorists in order to buy him time. Before dying, Ethan told Tony to cherish life, and Tony responded with tears. At this moment, the superhero Iron Man was officially born. Reborn in hell, a ball of soul light suddenly appeared in Andrew's palm, but it was Ethan's soul. Before, when Ethan died, the magic power in Tony's body turned into a channel, taking Ethan's soul into the hell of rebirth. Superhero. Andrew shook his head and threw Ethan's soul to Trask. Talents like Ethan were needed to reborn in hell. In a building in Manhattan, the future Dr. Reed looked at the stock data on his computer and almost cried. Why did the stock of such a stable Stark group drop like this? I'm afraid I'm going to go bankrupt again this time. Why should I say again? Dr. Reed secretly sighed. At this moment, his best friend, a sturdy bald man, Ben Grimm, the future Stone Man, ran in and shouted in surprise, Reed, Tony Stark he was rescued and is holding a press conference. Real. Dr. Reed was overjoyed and hurriedly turned on the TV and found Tony sitting on the ground holding a press conference. Great, my stock is saved. Dr. Reed shouted excitedly. At this moment, Tony on the TV loudly announced, from now on, the Stark Group's Weapons Research and Development Center will be permanently closed. What? Dr. Reed was dumbfounded. He asked Ben, did I hear correctly? The Stark Group closed its Weapons Research and Development Center. They just sell arms, okay. Ben looked at Dr. Reed with pity and said, you heard me right. It's over. Stark Group's stock price will definitely collapse. Dr. Reed turned to Ben with a sad face and said, Ben, I'm bankrupt again. Condolences. Ben comforted, and Dr. Reed asked in shock, why are you so calm? Because you've been broke a dozen times. Ben said, don't worry, you don't have to worry about me. I have already received your salary for the next 3 months in advance before you invest. Quote. Dr. Reed was speechless. Why are you so skilled? Also, why am I so unlucky? Some people lose money, and others naturally make money. Andrew and Tony's father, Howard, make a lot of money. The Cluedo company jointly founded by the two has been officially established and is ready to be officially launched. With Howard here, Cluedo company has a bright future. Now we are waiting for the battle between Iron Man and Iron Overlord. I hope they will be more intense than in the movie. Andrew stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the Stark Group from a distance. Whether the plan to use disasters to collect souls would work, he would soon know. A mysterious hero suddenly appeared on the battlefield in the Middle East. He wore steel armor and fought against terrorists everywhere. Some said he was the secret weapon of the American military, while others said he was the messenger of God. Looking at the steel suit on the screen, Obadiah Stane, the director of Stark Group and whom Tony regarded as his father, had greed in his eyes. If he could master this suit, he would become a god in the United States. Tony, you really know how to lay golden eggs. The bald and bearded Obadiah murmured to himself. At this time, his cell phone suddenly rang. He listened to a few words and said excitedly, I will go see you in person. Soon, Obadiah brought his personal bodyguard group to a camp in the Middle East. The owner of the camp, the terrorist leader Raza, personally came out to greet him. Friend, we finally meet. Raza was the terrorist who injured Tony before, and the reason why he did this was because of Obadiah's order. Obadiah had long wanted to get rid of Tony's monopoly on the Stark Group. Obadiah followed Raza into the tent and asked impatiently, where is the thing I want? It's here. Raza, whose face was covered with burns, pointed to the reassembled Mark I in the corner and said, It took my people several days to find them all from the desert. In addition, these are the drawings and the information at that time. Video. Let me see. Obadiah opened the video, which recorded Tony's process of building the arc reactor and Mark I. Unfortunately, because it was too blurry and Tony deliberately blocked it, many details could not be seen. You actually think he is helping you make Jericho missiles? It's terrible to be uneducated. Obadiah pointed to Ethan on the screen and asked, "Where is this person?" Raza replied with an ugly face, "He is dead." Obadiah continued to ask, "Is the body still there?" Raza was confused. "What's the use? Just because you're useless doesn't mean I'm useless. I know a mutant who can talk to corpses." Obadiah said that the butterfly effect caused by the fusion of worlds officially appeared at this moment. With so many worlds merging, the future cannot remain unchanged. Raza said excitedly, "Great, Obadiah, I can give you everything, but you must make a batch of suits for me. I want to conquer the world like my ancestors did." Obadiah couldn't help laughing. 10 minutes later, all the terrorists in the base were eliminated by the personal bodyguards he brought. A bunch of uneducated tools. They still want to be masters, they don't know what it means. Obadiah smiled disdainfully and returned to the United States with Ethan's body, the wreckage of the Mark I, and the drawings. Not long after, Obadiah's doctors successfully created a copycat version of the arc reactor. Although it was less effective, it worked. Obadiah thought it could be used. That night, Rebirth Group was as busy working overtime as it had been in the past few months. Susan deeply doubted whether she had made a wrong decision to take over as vice president. She was too busy. Fortunately, her boss would accompany her home every day to make her happy. People's relationships have also improved by leaps and bounds. Natasha was also full of doubts. Is she here to be an undercover agent or to work as a cowboy? She works 12 hours a day and has to work overtime after returning home. She doesn't even dare to turn off her mobile phone. What kind of undercover is this? How about I report this company directly? Natasha secretly complained. At this moment, there was a loud bang in the distance, and Natasha's expression changed slightly. This was the sound of a missile exploding. The problem is, this is Manhattan, not the Middle East. Natasha hurriedly walked to the window and saw a dazzling fire coming from the Stark Tower in the distance, followed by a large number of gunshots and explosions coming from there. "What are you doing?" Natasha frowned deeply, and Andrew was also a little surprised. He used his supervision to look at the Stark Tower opposite, and found that it had become a battlefield, the Iron Suit versus the American Army. Andrew secretly complained. "Although I hope the scene is bigger, where are so many uniforms? And why is there an army? Let's push the time forward a little." Because of doubts about the source of terrorist weapons, Tony sent his assistant and girlfriend Pepper to steal information from Obadiah's computer. As a result, Pepper found a video of terrorists threatening him on Obadiah's computer, and Tony knew that the reason why he was attacked was because Obadiah paid to kill him. Tony was very angry and put on Mark III and came to New York to question Obadiah. At the same time, Pepper also came with Coulson and others. In Obadiah's computer, Pepper discovered that he had mastered the method of making the arc reactor and manufacturing suits on a large scale. So Coulson not only brought a large number of agents, but also asked the military for help. The military did not waste any nonsense and directly armored vehicles and armed helicopters were dispatched to assist. Naturally, Obadiah would not surrender, so with violent explosions, the area around Stark Tower turned into a battlefield. Bang! Tony Stark, who was wearing a gold and red Mark III suit, was punched away by Obadiah's Iron Overlord, smashing through the opposite wall. Tony got up from the ground and asked the Iron Overlord angrily, "Obadiah, why?" "Why? Because the Stark Group is mine, not yours. You have no idea how much I have paid for the Stark Group." As Obadiah shouted, he raised the machine gun in his right hand and pointed it at Tony. The next second, accompanied by fierce gunfire, countless bullets were fired at Iron Man. Iron Man hurriedly avoided, and Obadiah controlled the machine gun to sweep across. Iron Man's feet burst into flames and rushed in front of Iron Overlord. Then, he raised his right hand and blasted Iron Overlord with an arc pulse cannon. Iron Overlord sidestepped to avoid the attack, and then he grabbed Iron Man and smashed him to the ground, causing the ground to shatter with a loud bang. It wasn't over yet. Iron Overlord raised his left foot and stepped hard on Iron Man. Iron Man rolled to avoid Iron Overlord big foot. Then, he released a pulse cannon from his chest and hit Iron Overlord. Iron Overlord flew backwards and crushed a car, flat. Iron Overlord was very angry, got up and grabbed a moving car and threw it at Iron Man. Iron Man hurriedly held the car with both hands to prevent the people inside from getting into trouble. The people in the car were frightened and stepped on the accelerator. As soon as the poor Iron Man put the car down, he was rolled under the car and was in a miserable state. Iron Overlord was unyielding and rushed over with a rumble. Iron Man was very angry, got up and rushed forward fiercely. While Iron Overlord was fighting Iron Man, more than a dozen black and white suits fought with the army. Countless bullets were fired at the black and white suits, including large-caliber vehicle-mounted machine guns and helicopter Gatling. The black and white suits flew into the sky to avoid the bullets, and then they counterattacked unceremoniously. A tracking missile produced by the Stark Group quickly shot towards the armed helicopter with a steaming tail. Although the armed helicopter tried its best to avoid it, it was still hit by the missile on its tail. The helicopter spun violently and fell down. Finally, it hit a building and exploded with a loud bang. A large amount of black smoke and flames shot into the sky, and countless glass shattered. Many people in the building died tragically on the spot, and some were trapped in the burning floors. The drivers in black and white suits laughed and fired missiles at the armored vehicles below. Boom, 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 the armored vehicles exploded one after another. The soldiers and agents suffered heavy losses and hurriedly fled the sea of fire. These guys, Coulson cursed, picked up a rocket launcher and fired at the black and white suit. Boom, the shell hit a black and white suit and exploded. The black and white suit fell from the sky on the spot. The chest armor was completely deformed and lay motionless on the ground. It's not invincible. Coulson breathed a sigh of relief. The material of the black and white suit was quite different from that of the Mark III and Iron Overlord. To put it simply, the cost of the black and white suit was only $20 to $30 million US, while the Mark suit cost hundreds of millions or even hundreds of millions US dollars. Kill them. Seeing that their companions were beaten down, the remaining black and white uniforms were very angry. They raised the Gatling gun in their left hand and fired wildly downwards. The agents and soldiers could not resist at all and fled into the surrounding buildings. The black and white warriors chased directly into the building. At this time, the citizens in the building suffered. From time to time, some people were affected by the fighting and screamed miserably. Some buildings even burned with raging fire. Although these soldiers and agents did not intend to do so, there is no doubt that the citizens were harmed by them. Although the situation is different from what was expected, to me, this seems to be a good thing. Andrew raised his eyebrows and prepared to officially go to work. At the same time, he asked the security guard downstairs to close the door of the building. The Rebirth building was not too close to Stark Tower, so it should not be affected here. On the highway, a bus full of passengers was overturned by Iron Overlord. The people inside screamed in panic. Tony tried to save people, but was punched away by Iron Overlord. Tony wanted to lure Iron Overlord to fly into the sky, but Iron Overlord didn't fall for the trick and raised his hand to shoot wildly at the bus. Tony had to come down and fight with him, or in other words, get beaten. Many people in the bus were injured. They screamed and shouted for help, but no one came to save them. Just when everyone was in despair, their eyes flashed, and they all appeared on a floating island, surrounded by blue sky and white clouds, completely different from reality. Everyone was stunned. They looked around and found that besides them, there were many other people on the island. These people generally looked very bad, some were covered in blood, and some were charred. Only people who are full of fear and despair will be pulled into this illusion. The total number of people is about 700, people in office buildings, injured on the road, seriously injured soldiers and agents, etc. At this moment, the sky suddenly lit up with a dazzling light. Everyone looked up subconsciously, but only saw a bright human-shaped flame. Then, they all screamed, their eyes stung, and tears kept falling. Don't look directly at God, an effect someone deliberately created. You're here because you're dying. Andrew clapped his hands and everyone's eyes returned to normal. Then, he said in a majestic and sacred voice, "If you want to live, sign a contract with me and give your soul to me after death." Everyone was stunned. Some people wanted to speak, but found that they could not speak. At this time, a contract appeared in front of them. This is the content of the contract. You have 2 minutes to decide whether to sign it. Whether you sign or not, if you leave here, you will lose this memory. Quote. Everyone became more and more shocked. Looking at the contract in front of them, most people were hesitant. However, some people chose to sign the contract immediately after reading the contents of the contract. The reason is simple. They are about to die. Now that they see a life-saving straw, they naturally have to hold on tightly. After all, their souls will be taken away after death. Some people were affected and chose to sign the contract, but many people refused. Some could not believe in Andrew who suddenly appeared, some thought they could be saved, and some were devout believers. My soul belongs only to God. If I die, God is calling me. A middle-aged man chanted silently, and Andrew waved him off. Then, he said, if you want to leave, you can leave at any time. Remember, you only have one chance. Some people chose to leave, and the rest looked hesitant. As time went by, more and more people signed the contract. By the end of the time, about 300 people pressed their fingerprints on the contract. The harvest is okay. I can try to find some salespeople next time. The effect should be better. As for me, posing in the sky is enough. Andrew nodded with satisfaction. At this time, a force was introduced into his body from the rebirth hell. This was the reward of hell. As long as you sign a soul contract and clarify your ownership, you can increase your strength. This should be the duty mentioned by Ancient One. Andrew thought thoughtfully, what is the duty of hell is to give souls a destination. Andrew waved his hand, and everyone was sent out of the illusion. Then, he ordered Howard, Teslac, and Feng Mo, start rescuing people. On the road, Iron Overlord smashed Iron Man's head with his fist. He laughed loudly and said, Tony, thank you for laying the last golden egg for me. I will use your golden egg to become the richest man in the world. Can't you have a higher pursuit? As a villain, you have failed enough. The dizzy Tony was as venomous as ever. At the same time, he quietly activated the device on his body and prepared to fly into the sky with Iron Overlord. If he guessed correctly, Iron Overlord should not have been winterized. Iron Overlord snorted coldly, and popped out missiles from his back, preparing to finish off Tony. At this moment, a black figure ran from a distance at high speed and hit Iron Overlord with a bang. Iron Overlord was knocked out on the spot and rolled on the ground. This black figure was a mighty suit with a dove mark on the chest. He looked down upon Tony who fell to the ground and said, You are the worst Stark I have ever seen. Who are you? Do I know you? Tony was very dissatisfied. At this time, he noticed the arc reactor on the chest of the black suit and cursed a little crazy, another thief. I didn't steal anything from you. Besides, my reactor is more advanced and powerful than yours. Howard snorted coldly. He took the axe from his back and prepared to chop Obadiah to death as he got up. He was so bald that he dared to bully his son and seek death. At this moment, Trask's voice sounded in Howard's mind. I said, have you forgotten your work? Killing Obadiah can also save lives. Howard muttered and shouted to Obadiah and Tony. We, the Peace Knights, are here to save people. If you beat yourselves, ignore us. After speaking, Howard rushed to the side of the bus and used an axe to cut the side of the bus. Then, many robots the same size as ordinary people flew over from a distance and clumsily rescued the people in the bus. Due to time constraints, these robots are very simple, just a skeleton with a steel shell, but they are enough. Peace Knights. Tony and Obadiah looked confused. What the hell is this? Obadiah even cursed in his heart. What are you doing to save someone and hit me? Obadiah hesitated, started the machine gun and shot at Tony again. Tony immediately flew into the sky. This time, Obadiah was fooled. He sprayed a large amount of black smoke from his feet and chased Tony menacingly. Howard looked contemptuous. There is so much black smoke, you can tell it is a defective product at a glance. At the same time, many robots rushed into the battlefield to save the seriously injured soldiers on the ground and the contractors in the building. Both the enemy and us were stunned by this. What did one of the black and white suits want to do? At this time, Teslac, who was attached to the tall robot, said coldly to the black and white suits, We are pacifists, here to save people. After saying that, Teslac raised his hand, and a laser blasted out from his index finger, cutting a deep crack in the ground. The black and white suits were taken aback and chose to turn a blind eye to the robots and concentrate on destroying S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and the army. The ghost robots wasted no time and quickly moved the soldiers on the ground. Surprisingly, they did not move all the wounded. A wounded man yelled dissatisfied at the passing robot, "Why don't you save me? My leg is broken." "Because you gave up on yourself," Teslac said coldly, leading the robot to move the contractors to a safe place. The rescued people cried with joy. Although they didn't know what the situation was, they were saved. This is more important than anything else. While the robots were busy, Feng Mo turned into a strong wind and entered the burning building and rescued some contractors. It must be said that his ability was really useful. "What's going on?" Coulson looked confused. It was strange enough that a group of pacifists suddenly came out to save people. These pacifists actually picked people to save. Who was playing a prank? Although it's weird, it should be a good thing. Coulson took out his communicator and asked in a low voice, "Rhodes, when will the fighter plane come?" The voice of Iron Man's friend Colonel Rhodes came from the communicator. "We have set off and will arrive soon." "Very good." Coulson put down the communicator with a complicated expression. This time, he underestimated the strength of the suit. "The future world will be a world of steel suits." Teslac reported to Andrew. "Boss, 5 Raptor fighter jets will arrive in 3 minutes. It looks like it's about to end. Take the contractor to a safe place as soon as possible." Andrew nodded. The American fighter planes may not be able to deal with Iron Overlord and Iron Man, but it is not too difficult to deal with the black and white suits. They are far inferior to the real steel suits in terms of performance and defense. At this moment, the previously extremely arrogant black and white suit suddenly fell to the ground. The arc reactor on the chest continued to emit current, and the driver inside was killed by the violent current on the spot. There was only one exception, and that was Iron Overlord. He was taken to the sky by Iron Man, and his whole body was frozen, so he happened to escape this disaster. "Boss, it's not good. There is something wrong with the arc reactor that Obadiah guy made. It will explode if it overheats." Howard hurriedly reported to Andrew. "The arc reactor has huge energy. Once it explodes, the surrounding area will be turned into ruins." Teslac also said, "It will explode within 30 seconds at most." Tony also discovered this, but in 30 seconds, he had no time to take away all the black and white uniforms. He gritted his teeth and asked Jarvis to search for Pepper's location. Now, all he could do was rescue him. Pepper. Tony felt very painful and guilty because these people were all implicated by him. Not good. Why do I feel so good? Andrew's eyes lit up, and he immediately pulled most of the people around Stark Tower into the illusion. Tony Stark, Coulson, and the people who had entered the illusion last time were excluded. However, Pepper in a fantasy world. In the illusion, Andrew told the story about the explosion of the arc reactor, and then he said, 2 minutes, sign the contract, I will save you, otherwise, you will die here. It is worth mentioning that of the 2 minutes here, only 2 seconds have passed outside. Everyone who was pulled in looked at each other, because they couldn't speak, they couldn't discuss, they could only think by themselves. Pepper's eyes flashed, and he didn't sign the contract. The explosion of the black and white suit was no small matter. The God in front of him wanted to save them, so he had to take the black and white suit away. In other words, even if he didn't sign the contract, he could still be safe, unless there is no one who signed the contract. But this is obviously impossible. Everyone is afraid of death, and the conditions of this God are very confusing. No wonder everyone is not allowed to talk. As Pepper expected, about 500 people chose to sign the contract, and Andrew once again made a fortune. Obadiah is such a good man for sending me so many souls. Andrew whistled, and the Harley motorcycle in the garage started on its own, rushing from the underground to the door of the Rebirth building with a roar. Andrew jumped from the building and landed on the motorcycle. Immediately afterwards, dark flames burst out from Andrew's body, and the flames quickly spread to the Harley motorcycle. The Harley motorcycle quickly deformed, like a roaring ferocious beast. Black Hellfire is a new flame that evolved after Andrew devoured the spirit of vengeance, and is far more powerful than explosive Johnny's red flame. Here we go, show time. After becoming the Ghost Rider, Andrew drove his motorcycle towards Stark Tower, leaving a straight trail of flames behind him. Immediately afterwards, a large amount of black gas emerged from Andrew's body and turned into more than a dozen chains, wrapping around the black and white battle clothes on the street and in the building. The black and white battle clothes were entangled by the chains and flew into the sky like a kite. "What is that?" Tony, who was anxiously looking for Pepper, was shocked when he saw the Fire Knight. Where did this guy who is so cool and has no friends come from? Also, what is he going to do? More than 10 seconds later, Andrew arrived in front of Stark Tower, but he did not stop, but accelerated forward. Just when everyone thought he was going to hit the building, his motorcycle drove up to the building, breaking the glass along the way, soaring straight into the sky with brilliant flames. This unscientific. Tony's jaw almost dropped, and Newton's coffin board could hardly hold it down, right? Others were also stunned. One office worker couldn't help but take out his mobile phone and shouted, "Honey, come here and see God. This is Ghost Rider." Susan looked at the chariot of fire soaring into the sky, and her mind was in chaos. The Ghost Rider that Andrew said actually appeared in reality. Thinking of something, Susan turned and ran towards Andrew's office. Natasha also remembered the Ghost Rider and hurriedly took out her mobile phone to take pictures. On the other side, Andrew used the momentum to fly straight into the sky. Then, he swung his right hand upwards, and more than a dozen black and white battle suits soared into the sky. The next second, more than a dozen black and white battle suits exploded simultaneously, and the entire sky was filled with white light, as if daylight had arrived. Everyone first exclaimed, then cheered loudly. When the white light disappeared, many people looked up at the sky, waiting for the hero to return, but contrary to their expectations, the Fire Knight disappeared. "He must be an angel who returned to heaven after saving us," one person shouted, and many people nodded. "It must be, yes, otherwise how could it be so cool?" "Angel? I don't believe there are angels in this world. Wait, Obadiah." Tony thought of something and hurriedly looked for Iron Overlord, only to find that Iron Overlord had taken advantage of the chaos to escape. Tony was very annoyed. Iron Overlord escape would cause trouble in the future. Howard flew to Tony and said, "Tony Stark, this world is bigger than you think. You have to learn to be humble." Tony snorted coldly. "Humility? Sorry, the Stark family doesn't have this tradition, because we don't need to be modest. I really want to beat this kid." Howard complained secretly, and said, "It's better to be more modest. Isn't the feeling of palladium poisoning unpleasant?" Tony's expression changed. "How do you know? Your father once worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. After his death, S.H.I.E.L.D. seized some of his things, which contain the information you need." Howard laughed a word and turned around to leave with a group of robots. Tony was stunned and asked loudly, "Who are you and why do you know about my father?" Howard didn't answer. Tony wanted to catch up, but after hesitating, he stopped bitterly. He wanted to stay here to clean up the mess, and Pepper hadn't been found yet. On the roof of the Rebirth building, Andrew appeared out of thin air. He was about to go back to the office when he suddenly sensed something and was startled. Andrew frowned and used magic runes to contact the Supreme Mage Ancient One. He asked, "Supreme Mage, I just sensed that a new world has merged into our world. Is it an illusion or is it true? You are indeed special." "It's true. The fifth world has been integrated." Ancient One said. There was a light curtain in front of her, and in the light curtain, a spider fell on the neck of a high school student. Andrew asked in confusion, "Then why couldn't I feel it before?" Ancient One said, "Because you didn't have a bond with the earth before." "Bond? That's a disgusting word." Andrew hung up the phone with a look of disgust. He didn't care about world integration. In fact, he even welcomed it. The more worlds there are, the more disasters there are, and the more souls there are. I made about 800 souls this time, which is pretty good. More importantly, it proves that my plan can work. Andrew smiled and returned to the office. As soon as he entered, Susan rushed over and asked excitedly, "Andrew, you are the Ghost Rider, right?" "Right." Andrew did not deny it. He was a demon king and there was no need to be too cautious. "Are there really angels in this world?" Susan became more and more excited, and she asked rapidly, "Andrew, does heaven really exist? Also, how did you do what you just did? It's super unscientific." Andrew raised his hand to hold Susan's chin and whispered in her ear, "Go to my house and I will tell you slowly." Susan was a little shy, but she didn't refuse. The two had been together for several months, and it was time to take it a step further, and she felt it now. While Andrew was happy, Coulson was dealing with the mess in a depressed way. He had many things to do, such as finding someone to put out the fire, sending the wounded to the hospital, dividing the spoils with the military, and keeping everyone secret. Of course, the most important thing is to report to your superiors. S.H.I.E.L.D. does not intend to let the public know about this matter. As for the reason, of course it is to protect the world, claiming to be. This battle has such a huge impact. It will not be easy to suppress it. It seems that there is no need to sleep tonight. Looking at the desolate surroundings, Coulson sighed and called Nick Fury. Coulson first reported the matter, and then said, "Director, I underestimated Obadiah this time. If it weren't for the fire night, it might have caused heavy casualties." Nick Fury snorted coldly. "Knowing that you have made a mistake, you can still be saved. You deal with it first, and I will rush over immediately. In addition, give up investigating Andrew Wong, and I will take over personally." Coulson was stunned. "You will take over personally?" Nick Fury said. "According to Natasha's report, he is most likely the Fire Knight." "Is he the Fire Knight?" Coulson exclaimed, feeling frightened for a while. Fortunately, he didn't go directly to the other party to cause trouble like Natasha said, otherwise, he would have been burned. Nick Fury thought of something and ordered, "Coulson, that Peace Knights are very problematic. After the end of the situation is dealt with, find them as soon as possible." Coulson nodded. "Okay." The next morning, at the hotel controlled by the Stark Group, Coulson handed Tony the speech. He said, "You will read this later. Our S.H.I.E.L.D. will capture Obadiah as soon as possible and prevent him from letting go. He continues to cause harm." Tony took the speech with an unhappy look on his face. He didn't like lying to people like this, but he needed S.H.I.E.L.D. to help clean up the mess, so he had no choice but to cooperate. Tony thought of something and asked Coulson, "How much do you know about the Peace Knights and the Fire Knights?" "We are investigating." Coulson lied with a smile on his face. His look was very deceptive. Tony did not ask further questions. At this time, Pepper hurried in. "Watch TV." Pepper turned on the TV and turned to the Horn TV channel. The host Jameson was introducing loudly. According to the news obtained by this station, Tony Stark wore a ridiculous armor last night at the Stark Group and the group director Obadiah starts a war. While Jameson was speaking, the screen switched to last night's battle. The picture quality was quite clear, and you could even hear the conversation between Tony and Obadiah. Tony frowned. "How could this happen?" "Coulson, didn't you say it was solved? The technical department has processed all the videos, and I don't know why this happened." Coulson hurriedly called Bugle TV to interrupt the program. Unfortunately, Bugle TV did not agree to the above request and continued to broadcast. "There is no doubt that this is Andrew's work. He wants to let the people know the truth, and at the same time, establish the credibility of Bugle TV, which will help collect souls in the future. As far as we know, the reason why Tony Stark and Obadiah went to war is because Obadiah has been selling weapons to terrorists for a long time. In addition, Tony Stark's attack was also arranged by Obadiah." Jameson kept talking, and Tony complained, "Where did this guy come from? He knows more than me, the client." While speaking, Tony threw the speech aside casually. It was no longer needed. Everyone knew that he was the Iron Man. The TV station continued to broadcast the scene. The Peace Knights and the Fire Knights behind them all appeared, which was quite complete. Finally, Jameson continued. "Many people said that the video they took last night disappeared inexplicably, and at the same time, some people warned them to shut up. I have every reason to suspect that there is a special organization that is violating the public's right to privacy and information, and I will dig out this organization at all costs. In addition, there are a lot of videos about last night on the Kuei-do app. Everyone is welcome to download them." Quote. After Jameson finished speaking, a QR code appeared on the screen. Pepper and Tony took out their mobile phones to scan the code at the same time. Coulson was speechless. "Do you want to be so cooperative?" Coulson said with a headache. "We have to prepare a new rhetoric." "No, since it has been made public, let's tell the truth." "Anyway, I didn't want to hide it." Tony said. "From now on, I am Iron Man." Coulson hesitated for a moment and did not try to persuade him again. For some reason, he suddenly felt like a curtain was being opened. The era of superheroes has officially arrived. In the Rebirth building, Andrew walked towards the office a little unhappy. As for Susan, she was still asleep because she was too tired last night. The reason why Andrew was unhappy was not because he had to come to work, but because he had a strange dream last night. In the dream, a little boy with an ever-changing face stood outside a glass-like barrier and kept yelling at him. He seemed very angry, but the glass blocked the sound and could not hear what he was shouting specifically. This made Andrew confused, very unhappy. This shouldn't be an ordinary dream. I am the Demon King and I usually don't dream. Andrew thought secretly. At this time, he sensed the situation in the office and became more and more unhappy. He opened the door and walked in. As soon as Andrew walked in, the boss's chair turned around, and a one-eyed black man asked him in a deep voice, "Are there really angels in this world?" Andrew took out his mobile phone expressionlessly and dialed the number of the guard room. 2 security guards came up. "Someone broke into my office. Also, call the police. You can tell at a glance that that guy is not a good person." Nick Fury was dumbfounded. He had shocked many people with this trick, but no one would ever call the police. It would be fun if the dignified director of S.H.I.E.L.D. was caught for this. Nick Fury stood up and asked coldly, "Call the police. Aren't you afraid that your secret will be leaked?" Andrew said proudly, "I, Andrew Wong, have lived an honest life, and I have nothing to fear from being known." Nick Fury stopped beating around the bush and said, "Ghost Rider Andrew King, I am Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. On behalf of the United Nations Security Council, I want to talk to you." S.H.I.E.L.D. Never heard of it. Also, don't scare me with the United Nations. Andrew sneered. You are full of sins. Your organization must be an evil organization. If you have anything, come here and I will take over. Full of sin. Nick Fury was stunned for a moment, and then said, I am indeed full of sins, but that is necessary. Everything S.H.I.E.L.D. and I do is to protect the world. Andrew said. Save these words for the police, they are coming soon. Seeing that Andrew couldn't make sense at all, Nick Fury was a little annoyed. He said, Andrew Wong, I have no ill intentions towards you, otherwise I would not come to see you in person. The reason why Nick Fury came here in person was actually to recruit Andrew, who met the requirements of the Avengers very well. Andrew laughed. I don't mind you being malicious at all. In fact, I'm looking forward to you taking action against me. Nick Fury was speechless. At this time, the news of security coming upstairs was heard. He sighed helplessly and raised his hand. The floor-to-ceiling window behind him shattered. Then, a stealth Quinjet fighter fell from the sky and landed outside the window. Show up. The person piloting the Quinjet is Hawkeye Barton. In addition, Black Widow Natasha leads a team of people to ambush in the next room. Nick Fury will not joke with his own life. Andrew Wong, I will come to you again. Nick Fury glanced at Andrew, turned and walked towards the Quinjet. Want to leave? Have you asked me? Andrew snorted coldly, raised his hand and threw a ball of black flames at the Quinjet. The black flames quickly integrated into the fighter. Hawkeye immediately found that he had lost control of the fighter. Immediately afterwards, the 6-barreled Gatling under the fighter plane was raised and pointed at Nick Fury. Nick Fury was shocked, turned around and asked, Andrew Wong, do you know what you are doing? If you break my glass worth $100,000 and sit on my chair worth $900,000, you don't have to pay compensation. Andrew said confidently. Either pay the money, or wait for the police to come, and we will follow the procedures. Nick Fury is a bit gritty, that is, he is a black man, otherwise, his face will definitely be terribly dark. The dignified director of S.H.I.E.L.D. has actually been blackmailed, can you believe it? Nick Fury said. I'm going to have someone put the money into your company account. Andrew took back the Hellfire and said, as soon as possible, every day, collect 100,000 interest. Nick Fury walked back to the fighter plane with a sullen face. A moment later, the Quinjet jet spewed flames and flew away in the distance. At the same time, Natasha ordered the elite team to withdraw from the Rebirth building. As for herself, she continued to work with a miserable look on her face. Flying away now. Didn't you say that S.H.I.E.L.D. is very tough? Why did you become so soft when you came to me? Andrew was a little unhappy. He had been stimulating Nick Fury, waiting for him to take action on him, so that he could gain a lot more souls. The result was this. Shield, bah. In the Quinjet, Hawkeye Barton said to Nick Fury, I told you not to take risks a long time ago. Something almost happened. Nick Fury exhaled and said, I didn't expect that he could actually control the fighter plane. This time, I was careless. His abilities are indeed terrifying. Patton asked, what to do now? Mobilize men to besiege him. Don't act rashly first, wait until you find out all his strength. Nick Fury shook his head and said, taking a step back, even if we really have to take action, we can't do it in Manhattan. Manhattan cannot withstand another disaster. Barton nodded. That's right. You were scolded by the council before, so you can't make any more mistakes in a short time. Did you know that you would be shot if you eavesdropped on high-level meetings? Nick Fury looked unhappy and ordered, go to the Malibu Villa. I want to meet Iron Man. Iron Man is in New York now. If you want to see him, why don't you just come to him? Why go to the Malibu Villa? Barton was puzzled at first, but then he reacted. Wait a minute, you don't want to sneak into his villa and scare him when he comes back, do you? How could I, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., do such a ridiculous thing? Nick Fury shouted dissatisfied. I went to the Malibu Villa, of course I have my own reasons, you don't need to ask. Barton sneered. It's not the best, otherwise Iron Man should be careful to imitate Andrew Wong and call the police. Nick Fury rolled his eyes. Today is a piece of black history. That night, Nick Fury succeeded in scaring Tony. Well, no, in Nick Fury's words, this is called shock, letting the other party know that S.H.I.E.L.D. is omnipotent. Besides, a dignified spy chief can't just knock on the door and pay a visit, right? Tony said with a dark face. S.H.I.E.L.D. really stole my father's information, otherwise it would be impossible to shut down Jarvis. Really? Nick Fury was stunned, and he said, S.H.I.E.L.D. did not steal your father's information. In fact, your father Howard is one of the founders of our S.H.I.E.L.D. In addition, our S.H.I.E.L.D. owns part of the Stark Group, shares. My father is an agent. Tony was shocked and asked angrily, why don't I know anything? Your father hid this from you to protect you. Nick Fury handed a tablet to Tony and said, Tony, the world is never safe. S.H.I.E.L.D. has always tried its best to protect the world. I hope you can participate in this operation. Wow, so great. Do you want to give you an award? A shady award. Tony snorted, took the tablet, glanced at it casually, and was stunned. Vampire. In a blink of an eye, the time came to the hot July. The battle in Manhattan gradually subsided, and the people of New York gradually got used to Iron Man flying around in the sky, and also got used to a talkative Spider-Man swinging around the city. At the same time, I am also used to Kuei-do. During this period, the download volume of Kuei-do has skyrocketed and it has become the most popular software in the United States. Spider-Man, hero or nuisance? In the editor-in-chief's office of the Daily Bugle, Andrew looked at today's news headlines and asked Jameson, the editor-in-chief, why do you blacklist Spider-Man every day? Boss, I don't have Spider-Man noir. What I tell you is the truth. If Spider-Man is really a hero, why doesn't he just lift his mask openly? Just like Iron Man. Jameson said plausibly. Spider-Man, and the Fire Knight who appeared some time ago, they all have problems, and they may even be bad guys. Andrew said casually, really? By the way, have I told you? I am the Fire Knight. Ah, Jameson was dumbfounded, the boss was actually the Fire Knight. Real or fake? Also, why did you reveal such a huge secret so casually? Will he be silenced? Boss, you misunderstood. Jameson immediately changed his words. I mean Spider-Man may be a bad guy. As for the Fire Knight, he is an angel descended. In fact, I prepared an article praising the Fire Knight, but I haven't had time to publish it yet. Andrew raised his eyebrows. One article. Jameson immediately said, no, I was wrong, it was 10 articles. I prepared 10 articles praising the Fire Knight. He is the savior of Manhattan and the patron saint of New York. Iron Man and Spider-Man are not qualified to compete with him. He compares. Very good. Andrew nodded with satisfaction and asked, who took this photo of Spider-Man? It's very clear. Jameson pointed at the young man outside the window and said, it was taken by Parker, the stupid one. Andrew turned his head and saw a familiar yet unfamiliar Peter Parker standing outside with a reserved look. It could be seen from the old clothes on his body that his family background was very poor. This appearance seems to be a fusion of two versions of Spider-Man. In other words, the first two versions of Spider-Man movies are merged. Andrew's eyes flashed. He came here specifically to take a look at Spider-Man so that he could grasp some context. Andrew looked back and said to Jameson, "It's really a bit silly." Jameson said proudly, "His conditions are actually good, but I won't let him become a regular employee because I want to buy the Spider-Man photos he has at a low price." Andrew laughed dumbly, but didn't say much. Although he could make Spider-Man live a better life with just one sentence, he was the Lord of Hell, not a philanthropist. Moreover, he does not need an employee who is not doing his job properly, running to save people every day, and earning his salary in vain. Andrew said, "Jameson, you have a great future. Work hard. When the Daily Bugle stabilizes, I will consider allocating some shares to you." "Thank you, boss." Jameson was overjoyed. When he saw Andrew getting up to leave, he hurriedly said, "Boss, we have received some special information recently. Do you want to publish it?" Andrew asked, "What special information?" Jameson whispered, "I thought the information related to vampires was nonsense at first, but someone took photos of vampires. In addition, according to my investigation, there have been many corpses drained of blood in the hospital recently." Vampire. Andrew was stunned. Could it be Blade Runner? In this case, the 5 fusion worlds would be complete. I haven't watched much of Blade. I need to investigate it. Maybe I can collect some souls. Andrew thought for a moment and said, "Give me the information. Don't report on vampires directly. Only report the facts and let readers guess and argue on their own." Andrew is going to investigate the vampire thing himself because he is very free now. Susan worked overtime at Rebirth Group. Howard worked overtime at Kuiji Company, the 3 demons worked overtime at the investment company, and Teslac worked overtime at Hell. Therefore, Andrew was very free and could do whatever he wanted. Do what? Good. Jameson hurriedly handed the briefcase to Andrew. Andrew nodded, stood up and left the office. When people outside saw him, they shouted respectfully, "Mr. Wong." Only Peter did not speak, because as soon as he saw Andrew, all the cells in his body reminded him that the other party was very dangerous, telling him to run away quickly. "Afternoon tea is mine." Andrew smiled and glanced at Peter. Peter almost jumped off the building in fear. Andrew laughed dumbly. His spider sense was very sensitive. He shook his head and left the newspaper office. After Andrew left, Peter breathed a sigh of relief. He was so frightened that the hairs all over his body stood up. He asked the secretary on the side, "Who was that just now? It feels so grand." "It's our big boss, Mr. Andrew Wong, chairman of Rebirth Group." The secretary said with regret, "If I had known that Mr. Wong was coming, I would have had my hair done and changed into better clothes. He is the #1 diamond man in Manhattan. Not only is he worth tens of billions, he is also a handsome young man." Peter was speechless. He glanced at the wedding ring on the other person's ring finger and remained silent knowingly. Peter secretly thought, "Why does Mr. Wong put so much pressure on me? Could it be that he is some kind of alien?" The Clinton district of Manhattan is called Hell's Kitchen by New Yorkers because of its messy and backward living quality, serious ethnic conflicts and high crime rate. That night, Andrew wore a t-shirt and jeans and went to a bar in Hell's Kitchen to drink. This bar had a strong smell of blood, and if he guessed correctly, it should be a stronghold of vampires. Not long after, 2 beauties with heavy makeup approached Andrew and asked, "Handsome guy, can you buy us a drink?" "So fast. Do I, the devil, look too harmless?" Andrew secretly complained. He could tell at a glance that these 2 beauties were not human beings. He smiled and said, "It's what I asked for." 2 beauties sat next to Andrew, one on the left and one on the right, offering him tofu to eat. When Andrew was fascinated, one of the green-haired beauties said, "Handsome man, do you want to go to a more exciting place?" Andrew pretended to ask, "More exciting than you?" "It's 100 times more exciting than us, where you'll see things you've never seen before." Another beauty said, "I guarantee you will never forget it. They are all dead, and of course they will never be forgotten for the rest of their lives." Andrew complained that these 2 vampire beauties should be the ones who bring food to the vampire restaurant. Andrew was about to agree when an interested voice came from beside him. An exciting place. Can we go together? Is there anyone still rushing to die? Andrew was a little curious, turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound, and found that it was a young blonde man. Hello. Seeing Andrew and others looking over, the blonde man said hello, and then pointed to his friends behind him and introduced, "We are students from New York University. Today is my birthday. They are here to help me celebrate my birthday." Andrew asked, "Coming to Hell's Kitchen to celebrate your birthday?" The blonde man said, "I want to find something exciting, but the bar in Hell's Kitchen seems to be no different from other places." Andrew burst into laughter. He was indeed the American college student with the highest suicide rate. At this time, a bookish blonde with big eyes said, "Keith, that's it for today. We should go back." "Gwen, don't be so disappointed. Today is Keith's birthday. We want to have a good time with him," shouted a woman dressed coolly, and so did the others, who were a little drunk and a little high. Gwen Stacy was a little helpless. Unlike these carefree classmates, as the police chief's daughter, she knew very well how dangerous Hell's Kitchen was. "Gwen Stacy, there's an unexpected bonus." Andrew glanced at Gwen and smiled. "Since you want to go, then go. I believe that Hell's Kitchen will not disappoint you. You may never forget what happened tonight." "That's right, Hell's Kitchen will never let you down." The two vampire beauties looked at each other and smiled together. If food is automatically delivered to their door, of course they will not refuse it. Then, everyone got up and followed the two beauties to a nearby warehouse. Of course, this warehouse was just a cover-up. The two beauties opened the basement door and led a group of people to a very hidden underground bar. This underground bar was very dark. The music was so loud that it made your ears buzz. There were many people dancing wildly inside, and some people were doing things that cannot be written in the corner. Keith and others were very excited when they saw this. Under the leadership of two beauties, they entered the ballroom and danced together. Only Andrew and Gwen did not move. They all frowned. Obviously they didn't like the environment here. The two beauties ignored Andrew. The prey had already entered the slaughterhouse, so there was no need to waste any more time. Gwen looked around with disgust and said, "I knew I wouldn't be able to come to this place." "Feel the same." Andrew nodded and said, "Hello, my name is Andrew Wong, and I am a temporary reporter." The surroundings were very noisy, but Andrew's voice still reached Gwen's ears clearly, and she said loudly, "Hello, my name is Gwen Stacy." Andrew said, "Gwen, you shouldn't be so accommodating to your friends. Hell's Kitchen has never been a place suitable for excitement. I'm not very gregarious." Gwen smiled bitterly. She was a super academic but didn't have very good interpersonal relationships. This time, she was invited to a classmate's birthday, so she couldn't just quit casually. "I can see it's almost time." Andrew smiled and took out a black umbrella from behind. Gwen was stunned. "Where did you get this umbrella?" "No, why did you take an umbrella?" Andrew said. "Isn't it common sense to hold an umbrella in a bar and wear a helmet when fishing?" "Where's the common sense? Why did I never know?" Gwen complained. At this moment, the music suddenly paused. Then, accompanied by the excited shouts of the vampires, the sprinkler switch on the roof was turned on, and a large amount of red liquid sprayed down. The vampires opened their mouths and swallowed greedily. Andrew opened his umbrella immediately and pulled Gwen to his side. Gwen saw the blood through the dim light and asked in shock, "Blood? What's going on? Are they evil believers?" Keith and the others also discovered something was wrong, but it was too late. The vampires around them showed their fangs and roared at them, making them scream in fear. There were also vampires surrounding Andrew and Gwen. When Gwen saw their blood-red eyes and terrifying fangs, she was so frightened that she hid in Andrew's arms. "Before we start, I have a question." Andrew hugged Gwen and asked, "Do you brush your fangs normally?" Both the vampire and Gwen were stunned. "What's the problem?" "No, at this time, you still have time to ask questions. When I turn you into a vampire, you will know whether or not you can do it." A vampire rushed towards Andrew, and the next second, he flew back at a faster speed, knocking several vampires behind him to the ground. The vampires were furious and rushed towards Andrew. Andrew's legs were like lightning, so fast that he couldn't see clearly. The vampires that rushed towards him flew out one after another. In a short time, Andrew was surrounded by a group of vampires. Both the vampire and Gwen were stunned, with Gwen exclaiming, "Kung Fu." A vampire pulled out a short gun from his waist and prepared to shoot Andrew. "What about Kung Fu? Can you still have a gun?" "How do you say that? A gun is fast 10 meters away, and a gun is accurate and fast within 10 meters. Andrew put down the umbrella, and the next second, a gunshot rang out, but it failed to penetrate the umbrella cover. Then, Andrew closed the umbrella and used it as a stick to hit the vampire's wrist hard. The vampire suffered pain and the gun fell to the ground, on the ground. Seeing this, the other vampires attacked Andrew again. Andrew held Gwen with one arm and waved the umbrella quickly with the other. Bang bang bang, the vampires were knocked to the ground one after another. Gwen looked at Andrew with a hint of obsession. The fear in her heart disappeared, leaving only a sense of security. It's really enjoyable, but it lacks some background music. Andrew was in a good mood. What? Why can an umbrella stop bullets and not be broken? Of course it's because of Andrew's magical blessing, otherwise it would have broken off long ago. This is not Huang Fei Hong's umbrella that will never be damaged. Good work, but it's a pity that you can't kill the vampire like this. At this moment, a cold voice came from not far away, and then, with a bang, the shotgun was fired, and a large number of bullets roared out, shooting through the bodies of several vampires. The next second, those vampires' entire bodies were reduced to ashes, from skin to flesh, from flesh to bone. The vampires were startled and turned their heads sharply to see a cool black guy wearing a leather jacket, a bucket, and sunglasses standing at the door holding a shotgun. "It's the Blade." The vampires screamed, and many of them ran away like frightened rabbits. The person coming is none other than the vampire hunter, Sunwalker Blade. While adding a magic mark tracking and surveillance to the Blade, Andrew complained, "You still wear sunglasses at night, are you afraid of hitting the wall?" "Don't be afraid, because the wall is not as hard as me. I am the hardest man." Blade grinned with flashing white teeth, and then he fired quickly, and a large number of vampires were reduced to ashes. Gwen was stunned and asked, "Why do people suddenly turn into gray?" "This is unscientific. They are not humans, they are vampires." Andrew said a little disgustedly, "Why do you dislike it?" "Because vampires have no souls." Having no soul means that vampires are magical creatures. If I guess correctly, there are big guys using vampires to collect souls. Andrew's eyes flashed fiercely, and he sentenced the vampire to death in his heart. The soul of the earth belongs to him, and no one can steal it. Gwen felt that her outlook on life was about to be shattered. Vampire. Are there vampires in this world? This world is bigger than you think. Let's go and leave this place to our vampire hunters. Andrew hooked a vampire with an umbrella handle and dragged him out. Keith and others, who were lucky enough to survive, hurriedly followed. They were covered in blood and looked extremely bad. In the warehouse outside the bar, Andrew let go of the vampire and said, "Tell me about vampires." "I'm very interested." "I'm also very interested," Gwen said. Seeing Andrew looking over, she said awkwardly, "I just want to conduct some academic research." She seems to be a top female student. Andrew smiled. Keith and the others wanted to leave, but without Andrew, they didn't dare to wander around and could only stay where they were. The vampire got up from the ground and growled at Andrew, "You humans are just food for our vampires." Andrew shook his head, waved his umbrella and broke both legs of the vampire. The vampire screamed in pain on the ground. Then, Andrew asked the others, "Who has silver products on his body?" "Our vampire is not good, and I want to teach him a lesson." "Silver." The vampire's expression changed drastically, and he decisively gave in. He covered his legs and asked resentfully, "What do you want to know?" Andrew took out his mobile phone and said while taking pictures, "Let's start from the beginning." It would be a long story to start from the beginning. The vampire said, "The Blood clan originated in Europe. Later, 12 pure blood families migrated to North America because of the Blood clan civil war." "What does pure blood family mean?" Gwen asked. Seeing everyone looking at her, she said a little embarrassedly, "I'm just curious." Andrew briefly introduced. Vampires are divided into pure blood and mixed blood. Pure blood is a natural vampire, and mixed blood is a human being infected by a pure blood vampire. The vampire shouted loudly, "It's not infection, it's transformation. Vampires are the noblest race. A group of walking zombies who are shady, afraid of garlic and afraid of silver, dare to say that they are noble. Andrew smiled disdainfully, and said impatiently, "Don't waste my time, keep talking." The vampire glanced at Andrew bitterly and continued, 12 pure-blood families have formed a vampire council in North America. They have reached an agreement with humans and will not actively attack humans. Humans are responsible for providing blood to them. Keith reacted and said angrily, "Humans provide blood to you. No wonder the blood in the blood bank is so expensive. It turns out that it is all fed to you vampires. We paid for it, and the blood was not only unpleasant to drink, it was also very expensive." The vampire shouted loudly, "All the money we worked hard for has been stolen by you humans." "Who is the vampire?" Everyone was speechless. The human capitalists seemed to be more vampires than vampires. A woman said disappointedly, "You are completely different from the aristocrats on TV." "Unfortunately, I used to be obsessed with vampires. Those pure bloods are the nobles. They are rare in number and possess huge wealth. Some pure bloods even raise blood slaves and can drink delicious living blood every day." The vampire said with envy and hatred, "However, their good days are over. Boss Dick and Faith will lead us to overthrow the parliament and turn humans into slaves. By then, we can have delicious blood to drink every day, and everyone can live like a noble." Quote, Andrew sneered, "Human beings are not as fragile as you think. In fact, you are the ones who are vulnerable." Gwen nodded and said, "Yes, you are afraid of the sun. A UV lamp can easily eliminate you. As for finding you, it is even easier. Just slightly modify the infrared thermometer. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."